There we go. Nice. Alrighty, let me do this real quick. There we go. Boom, bang, boom. Grab this right here. Put that shit down there. Kill that guy. Go over here. What's up, Fox? Hello, hello. Grab this right here. I come over here. I put that shit down there. And then bang. Should be good to go. Boom, 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 boom. There is something in the air, man. I don't know what it is. Hello, Stone Brick. Hello there. How's it going, Apollo? There's something in the air, man. I've felt so tired today. I don't know what it is. I don't think I'm sick. Like, I don't have any kind of symptoms or anything like that. But it's like I took I was doing some work. It is to be fair a relatively slow work week for me, thankfully. Like, I was doing some work and then I like took a nap during work, and then that nap just kept getting longer. And then I don't know, I barely woke up in time for stream. The nap ended up extending to like 3 hours. I think I might stream and then go back to sleep. For some reason I am exceedingly just tired. Not even necessarily physically, just like mentally. I could have like done nothing too. Like, it's not like I had to work. Like, I could have like played some 3 houses in my living room instead or something. But I just wanted to close my eyes. It's hard to say. Yes, yeah, part 2 of the spice rack video. Well, I guess we got through the first 3 hours, but we sort of stopped right before anything was about to become like, not. I think anyway. Usually, just got home, so perfect timing. Well, there you go. Usually the last part of these videos is where people, they've been introducing you to all of the horrors of the world, and then, it's becomes a little bit more about praxis from there. But I suppose we'll see. I actually don't know. I don't know how this video ends. I've been working on that Chile, or not Chile, the Cuba video, from yesterday. I still am not entirely sure if I want to. I think I want to split that up. I think if I hadn't already released like a video that went over Eisenhower to Carter, I think I might just edit it all down and make it one really long, but also like, well edited video. I think instead what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to cut it into lots of little sections and add like a lot of editing to those individual videos. Like, maybe every couple presidents is a video or something, like put Reagan and Bush in one video. Put like Clinton. Oh god, Clinton kind of has to be his own video. Bush has to kind of be his own video. They just did so much fucking shit, And then maybe do like Obama to present in one video. But I feel you, man. Mental exhaustion is real and painful. Yeah. I mean, I guess I haven't thunken a lot. Maybe my brain is saying it needs to eat. Well, we shall see. A weekend's coming up, so we should be good to go soon here. I have a Pathfinder session on Friday that I'm very excited for. All right, wait, this is way too loud. Oh my god, that will be a slight problem. Is it on 2x speed? No, it's not. Okay. So, starting right away with the fucking red light and the painful fucking facial expression. Maybe let's go back like 5 minutes, right? Maybe let's rewatch this Fascism as Imperialism Turned Inwards chapter again, just to get some context for what was happening, because it has been a couple days, and then we can go on from there.
They seem so like us. That's what makes it so shocking. War is no longer something visited upon impoverished and remote populations. It can happen to anyone.
This is, I mean, again, I think I was pretty brain broken by the time we got here too, so now maybe I can actually provide some more interesting commentary. But this is how it goes, right? You only really start to people really only started to give a shit. Like this whole chapter is called "Fascism as Imperialism Turned Inward," and I think that's an interesting way to phrase it, right? Because people only really started to give a shit about the injustices that their country committed, or at least a lot of people. The people who not necessarily are missed last stream because of a power outage. Context for Obama administration. We went over what every U.S. president had done in terms of the sanctions with Cuba. We started with Eisenhower a while ago, and we got all the way up to Trump too, right? Obama, kind of like Carter, right? Some progress, like in terms of some of the most egregious things that Bush had done, and oh boy, George W. Bush did a lot that was really, really, really bad, right? Some of the most like egregious, inhumane things that Bush had done, Obama rolled back. Obama started to make some progress in that direction, but on the whole, he still was absolutely like starving the island and all of that. You know, very similar to Jimmy Carter, basically. Some progress, maybe starting to steer the boat in the right direction, but not really anything too major. And of course, he was followed up by Trump, so everything immediately blew up again, right? What's good, buttresses? I got a Pathfinder session on Friday, the start of my new campaign. I'm very excited. I got to do some Foundry work, get everyone's character sheets set up and all of that, make sure all the macros work and everything. And we're watching the Spice Rack video. DMing? Indeed I am. I am DMing Strength of Thousands, if you're familiar with that. Should be very fun. I've already changed it up quite a lot. Funny, it's been funny that I've been playing 3 houses right before I DM Strength of Thousands, because the settings are very similar in my mind, and it certainly has given me some ideas for mechanics to add in there. But goddamn, the mosquitoes in my room harassing me, man. I don't know what it is. I know it's a mental thing, right? I know it's a mental thing, but if there's one like buzzing bug in my room, like a bug that is flying around that I can feel buzzing, like if it's like a spider on the corner of my wall or something, this doesn't happen. But if it's like a bug that is buzzing around my room, even if it never lands on me, even if it never does anything to me, even if it never comes close to me, just the idea that that is there makes my whole face itch. Thinking about it right now, I don't have a bug in my room, is sort of making like my face itch and my ears itch and stuff like that. It's like your body starts to think that like, oh, they could be on us at any moment. But yeah, so Obama basically he was a step in the right direction, but a very tiny step in the right direction. By and large, in his sort of defense, right? In his sort of defense, I say very lightly, the Helms-Burton Act that Clinton passed did make it significantly harder for any president to fully reverse the embargo on Cuba, even if they wanted to, because they codified it into law and took away the president's ability to roll it back with executive orders, right? But it is still doable through acts of Congress, and I don't believe, from what I understand, that Obama pursued that too heavily or anything like that. So again, minor steps in the right direction. Nothing really too major. All people talking about Cuba being Wakanda if the U.S. wasn't holding it back, made me curious about the Congo, so I'm looking in that direction for my own reading next. Ooh, let me know. If you find a bunch of stuff that's very interesting there, I'm sure you will. Anyway, almost every African country has a history of being an incredibly like rich, prosperous nation and then getting its shit fucked, I think. But do let me know. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, this, right? When I say people don't care until it happens to them, I'm not necessarily referring to the people like that one guy in chat a couple days ago who was actively saying go Trump, turn Cuba into a colony, go Trump. Like, these are not the people I'm talking about, because these people, when, you know, a white person even dies on US soil, they say should have complied and then you wouldn't have gotten shot. The people who are actively cheering on the deaths of innocent people, that is not who I'm talking about. It's the people, honestly, like me, before I, you know, and even still to a certain point, like me, people who are like, quote unquote, like their heart's in the right place, but they just don't really, it's more convenient to ignore the issue, right? It's more convenient to ignore the issue and not think about it and just live the rest of your life uh, hoping that it'll go away. People like that, but you know, like, you agree that American imperialism is bad. You agree that the system is unjust. You agree that capitalism sucks. But like, someone else would do something about it, right? These are the kind of people that tends to only take note when the bad shit comes home, right? It becomes, you know, it's thoughts and prayers when it's Palestinians dying overseas. But as soon as it's like, damn, they're killing people here, and they're like white middle class people, that's when it might, you know, that might turn into some action right there. I mean, it kind of is an indication that you're running out of time, right? If you're, or maybe that your plan to ignore it, turn the other way, and hope nothing bad happened to you is getting less and less likely. But yes, writing on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, this is part of a swiftly corrected trend in reporting on the war, which lamented how it was being visited on a relatively European and civilized people. Both direct quotes. I do remember seeing some stuff like this very early into the invasion of Ukraine, right? Like, people were, again, yeah, lamenting that it was, but you would think, like, maybe there was a woke angle to this, where it, like, you know, oh, like an analysis of like, oh, see, now the white man's strategies are being turned against him. But no, like, it was specifically a lot of like, wait a minute, but those guys aren't brown. It was very, very odd. 2022, by the way, I think.
There are three things I want to get at here, and they all branch from a text I referenced earlier. Martin Niemöller's poem First They Came is famous. Here it is in the Holocaust Encyclopedia as an emblematic summary of the Nazis' escalating repression. You're almost certainly taught this in school, maybe in a history class surrounding the topic of scapegoats. Of course, this is only most of the poem. There's a verse previous to this. First they came for the communists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist.
They came for the communists first, before anyone else.
A subtle redaction, especially considering that for most people socialism and communism are interchangeable, but this omission still goes some way to obfuscating both the difference between the groups at the time and which of them felt the initial brunt of repression. Except that this full quote isn't the full quote.
What?
Or rather, it's a self-editorialized condensation. Niemöller absolutely did pen this, but he also spoke at great length on this period in many places, and often covered ground not touched in his poem. In Of Guilt and Hope, a piece by Niemöller translated and published by the Philosophical Library in 1947, he includes a deeply important and fatally overlooked group persecuted by fascism. The sick ones were then put aside, the so-called
Right. We could.
I remember a conversation with a man who claimed to be a Christian. He decided, this might be right. The state spends a lot of money on those incurable people, and they are only a burden to all others. Is not doing away with them the best for everybody?
Yep. I mean, I mentioned last time we watched this about how I had this very same conversation with a girl in my university, like, you know, what, 7 years ago or something now, where she said that it might be like for the greater economic and societal good if we just automatically euthanized everyone who hit the age of like 75 or 80 or something, because they were just such a drain on the system, and like they were mostly done living according to them. There is a weird, I say weird, like, there is just a big ol', not eugenicist, just eugenicist undertone to our society necessarily, but also I guess this is the ableism, right? We also did kind of do that during COVID. Yeah, there is something baked into our societal fiber that makes us believe that the lives of those who are sick or chronically sick or even dying are like inherently less valuable than the lives of those who are not, right? And like in some cases you could argue it at, like, it's not you can argue, like, there are weird philosophical edge cases where you can do this, where it's like, you know, the idea, the trolley problem, but I put a baby on one end and an old man on his deathbed on the other end, you know what I mean? And who would you kill? And I feel like most people probably pick the old man, with the idea that they are going to die soon anyways, and the baby still has a full life ahead of them. And I'm also not entirely sure that I can necessarily fault anyone for that. But it is very rarely that this trolley problem actually exists, right? Generally, we have enough resources to take care of everyone, and the only reason we don't is because of the system that we have. Our brains are literally never made to empathize with people from the other side of the planet. Emotional dissonance is a built-in survival instinct, not an active decision, I think. Yes and no, right? In the sense that I think naturally, not even from the other side of the planet, even strangers, even your neighbors next door, right? I think that naturally, you have a natural bias to care more about your immediate family and your very close friends because and like for example, extreme example, like your children if you have any, because there is like a direct survival benefit to that because these are the people who are actively like you know their contributions to your life and your contributions to their life are the most significant, and in like I guess evolutionary biology sense, you're like contributing to each other's survival, I guess. But two things. One, it's only that you will, on average, again, if I put the trolley problem in front of you and it was your mother and a random stranger from someone across the world, unless you had a very bad relationship with your mother, most people probably pick their mother. They don't, but the difference is they don't feel great about it, right? It is easier, I think, is how I would say it. It is easier to empathize with people the closer they are to you. I don't know that to say that your brain wasn't designed for it implies almost a futility to the attempt, right? I think it is still more than possible for you to empathize with people from the other side of the planet, especially considering the fact that the worse the thing that a person is going through is, the easier it is to empathize with them, right? It might be hard to empathize with someone on the other side of the planet stubbing their toe on a kitchen table, right? But it shouldn't be that hard to empathize with hundreds of thousands of people who are on the other side of the world getting genocided. So I think it's, even if there's a human instinct to that, I think it's definitely a fightable instinct that should be fought and ignored. And also, let's not pretend that a large part of our system is not desensitizing you to dehumanize these people who are in quote-unquote underdeveloped countries or the global south or anything like that, right? While like it is true that part of it is probably like some natural instinct in your brain that has definitely been exploited, taken advantage of, and propagandized, that part of your brain, to make it so you don't even view these people as people, right? And you can see that difference in the fact that, you know, Renee Good, a relative stranger to basically everyone before she got murdered by ICE, still, people cared a lot more about Renee Good getting murdered by the authorities than they do almost every black person who gets killed by the police, except for the ones that, you know, black people really manage to make into global news, right? Or even more so, almost every like any individual like Palestinian or Cuban or Sudanese person or the number of countries in which human rights atrocities are currently occurring are way too high, right, to list all of them. And a lot of them I'm sure I don't even know about. But yeah, like individuals from those countries, you just don't care about enough. And I don't think that it comes down to proximity. I think it comes down mostly to who you've been taught to humanize, right? I think it's come down to mostly who you've been taught to humanize. Great point. Our survival instincts are still holding us back, though. Yes, and I really don't think it's as big of a factor as you're giving credit for, right? Your survival instincts tell you to do a lot of things that you don't. You know? They are very fightable. If it was just your natural brain's biases, those things are fightable. The main thing, like 95% of what's holding you back, is state propaganda, right? Your survival instincts tell you to, I don't fucking know. What's a great example of a survival instinct that you probably flout all the time? I mean, anything to do with taking care of your health, basically, right? If you are full and want to have 3 donuts, that is not your survival instincts telling you to do that. In fact, that part of, you know, if the part of you that is like, is probably, you know, that probably is closer to your survival instincts than the part that's like, I want 3 donuts. Right? You're not wrong, Apollo, but I think giving it too much credit is an obfuscation, basically, right? As I learned, though, it does feel like a lot of it is obfuscation of who's driving the trolley. Like, it seems we have enough to save everyone. Oh, yeah. The trolley problem. The question is, why are you in this trolley problem situation in the first place? In reality, philosophical discussions are interesting, and I do like them, and they do have applications to real life, of course. But in a real-world scenario, why do you ever end up in the trolley problem? It's because someone has put you there. And that person is generally the root of the problem, not the fact that the trolley is barreling down the tracks. Even if you make the quote-unquote correct ethical decision in that trolley problem, there will be more until the person who keeps tying people to train tracks and standing people in front of levers is dealt with. If I'm remembering right, one of the main ways the Nazis managed to maintain power was by framing the Communist Party as the enemy after the Reichstag fire. That sounds familiar, despite the fact that it was a lone wolf operation. Yep. Yeah, scapegoats, right? Scapegoats, and something to unite the rest of the populace against, so they look at it and not you.
Fascism's idolization of economic liberalism paired very well with the development of eugenics. The so-called incurables, as Nazi Germany decreed them to be, ranged from people with physical and mental disabilities like epilepsy or schizophrenia, to queer people, gay and trans alike, to anyone who was decreed to be feeble-minded. Not to plug my own shit here, but I've got an old video on eugenics if you'd be interested in finding out more about it. I think it largely holds up. The development of the Nazis' exterminationist programs.
Good evening, Mr. Brick. What are we watching today? We're on the second part of a very long video by Spice 8 Rack called Revolution, Fascism, and Magic the Gathering. Very interesting video. Currently talking about fascism as imperialism turned inwards is the name of this chapter. Virtually world leaders are the ones creating the trolley problem, you know.
Designation red.
These things could be dealt with enough of us. May I get a bit more volume on the vid? Oh, please, yes. Let me know if it's ever too quiet or anything like that.
Of forced sterilization of such people, which was rife in the world long before a swastika stained the skyline of Berlin. Winston Churchill, yeah, that guy again, was the vice president of the First International Eugenics Congress in 1912. The state of Indiana in the US passed the world's first involuntary sterilization law in 1907, informed by eugenicists who argued that criminality, mental problems, and even poverty were hereditary, with more...
I mean, this is the, as horrible as this is kind of the natural endpoint of not just conservatism, but also like liberalism in general, right? Why do I say that? I know it sounds extreme, but at least it feels reasonable in my head, in the sense of there is a reality at this point that everyone agrees on, no matter what, no matter how extreme your political ideology on the left or the right or anything like that, right? And it is that things are shitty, and by and large, they are getting shittier over time, right? And that trend has held for a long time. And even when things are getting better, there are still shitty things happening. There will always be bad things happening. There is no, like, even if you're an anarchist or an Islamist, yeah, right? Even like, you know, your most far-right ideologue is not, in fact, I guess even your most centrist, because the people on the far left or right are the ones who are usually saying that shit is so fucked up that it needs to be a radical change. But in the right's case, that radical change is usually getting rid of everyone who doesn't look like this guy. But it's still, they are obviously dissatisfied with the status quo, right? But even your most centrist, fence-sitting, just wants to grill, lay enlightened centrist cannot disagree with the idea that bad things are happening all of the time, and lots of people are suffering greatly. Whether they are poor, or being, you know, in war-torn countries, or whatever, right? Starving, homeless, etc. It's a fact of life. It is non-negotiable. The problem is, if you can't blame your system for it, because your ideology fundamentally rests on the idea that the system is fundamentally good and we have figured out the right solution, but it's just, you know, minor tweaks and balances here and there. And these minor tweaks and balances are never going to create so radical a change as to eliminate homelessness, poverty, and war. And I don't think anyone believes that. Even the liberals, I don't think, believe that such a thing is eliminatable, but more so maybe they're just trying to mitigate it. Um, then why is this stuff happening? If it's not the cause of like fundamental systemic rot, and getting rid of a few bad apples isn't enough to get rid of it entirely, right? So that can't be the root cause either. Maybe it's exacerbating it, but it can't be the root cause either. You're left with very few options. It has to kind of be someone, like, it has to kind of be the people's fault, right? Like, this is where you get all of this talk of, like, oh, well, black culture is just a little fucked up, or this is where you get the talk of eugenics, right? Like, the far right will tell you that the final solution to all of this is killing all of the immigrants and the brown people and the gays, and then that will magically make the white poor people richer, I guess. But then they'll kill them too anyway. But that's like the idea they sell, right? But the liberals don't have no such cure-all, right? They have no such idea where it's like, if we make this radical change, then everything will be fixed, because they don't believe in the concept of a radical change as a good thing to do inherently in their ideology. So it kind of leaves you with very few other outs if you think about it for long enough. If you refuse to do some kind of widespread systemic change, like either the left or the right would want in either direction, it kind of has to be people's fault. Black people clearly just they're violent, and it's that rap music or something like that. You know what I mean? Poor people must just be lazy and not working quite hard enough. Or, they must have been born to broken homes because, their dad was a shitty person and therefore their chances of success go down significantly or something. It really is a hop, skip, and a jump in my mind. Like, all you have to do is stop clutching your pearls quite as hard. It is a hop, step, and a jump from the system is inherently good and functional to we need to force sterilize people who have disability. Because, like, why is this happening? This stuff people were saying about, them arguing that poverty and criminality were hereditary, it's an explanation. And liberalism really leaves you with very few other explanations besides this. The other one they usually like to go to these days, because I guess the eugenics is a little, Hitler kind of ruined eugenics for everybody, I guess. The liberals' main and most enjoyed explanation for why things are wrong is the shadow conspiracy, right? The evil behind the scenes shadow conspiracy, which usually manifests as something incredibly anti-Semitic, right? But, sure. That is their other thing. It's like, well, if our system was just allowed to function as it's supposed to, then everything will be fine. There must be a small cabal of devils that are ruining everything, and they're definitely not the guys that I see on the news all the time. No, don't worry. It's some people we don't know about. It's some people we don't see. Who? The Jews, maybe? I don't know. They basically just you have to pick your Hitler poison at a certain point if you're a liberal, right? You either go down the eugenics route or you go down the anti-Semitism route. Really, Hitler did just kind of max out. He level capped liberalism, I guess, fucking early on. And then everyone's just been trying to catch up to him since then. It's kind of just like Einstein with coming up with relativity. And then 100 years later is when the scientific community was able to actually catch up and prove his theories or test his theories, right? The market cannot be wrong because it self-corrects, you see? Yeah. Centrism doesn't really leave much to choose besides hating minorities. Yeah. The kids listen to rap music, which gives them brain damage. Fuck, man, the liberals shot Tupac to try and stomp out the rap genre. Is that shit what happened? I'm not even saying that in credit. At this point, I would not be surprised if Tupac got shot by the CIA. They've gotten involved in less important shit in worse ways. Genuinely, I would not be surprised by that at all. But anyway, yeah, my point is while this is very it is, I think, very for what you were taught in the history books, it is, I think, very jarring to see that Winston Churchill was the leader of the world's first international eugenics committee. But when you think about it, it really does make a lot of sense, right? It does make the thought process follows with a hop, skip, and a jump.
law in 1907, informed by eugenicists who argued that criminality, mental problems, and even poverty were hereditary, with more than 30 states soon following.
That's insane.
Hitler's notion of Aryan purity was pseudoscience enacted with terrible bloodshed, but it was also just a continuation of a reasonably standard policy of extermination throughout the West. Queer and disabled.
Winston Churchill is really a guy you can never learn a second thing about because it was all bad. The first thing was pretty good, though. I mean, the first thing, I guess, was like fighting the Nazis, but again, it's like doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. I guess we'll take that.
Disabled persecution, of course, weren't the only fascistic
Oh, fuck, the
premonitions.
South Park bullshit,
There's
right?
something that, again, was much the norm for the rest of the Western world, which would directly inspire some of fascism's most heinous policies, and which is lacking from
The CIA would
any
shoot you for
version of
literally
Niemöller's
anything.
writings.
For fun sometimes.
On screen right now is a half-hour Bentafel. You've probably seen something similar if you've
What
ever been
is-
screen right
what
now
is it saying there?
half-hour Bentafel version of Niemöller's
What?
writings. On screen right now is a half-hour Bentafel.
Those subtitles can't be right. The accent is getting too strong here. I assume this is a German word that it's saying? I assume.
You've probably seen something similar if you've ever been to a hair salon or wig shop. It's a simple device which some people use today to match their hair type to a set number in order to pick out extensions that won't clash.
Sure.
This was also a tool whose inventor, Eugene Fisher, used to carry out
Not the South
Namibian
Park color
genocide.
graph. Yeah.
I'll let Angela Saine's words do justice.
It is,
to this
unfortunately,
horror
literally
actually recalls
that.
a conversation between her and the historian Subhadra Das. Fisher used this device in Namibia in 1908 to establish the relative whiteness of mixed race people,
Yeah.
reveals Das.
Yeah.
In what is now remembered as the first genocide of the 20th century, in the 4 years preceding 1908, Germany killed tens of thousands of Namibians as they rebelled against colonial rule.
Yep.
According to some estimates,
It's everywhere.
up to 3,000 skulls belonging to those of the Herero ethnic group were sent back to Berlin to be studied by race scientists.
Race scientists studying the skulls of African people. This can only end well.
Namibia was the first place that the Germans built a concentration camp. Depending on where your hair fell on this scale was the difference between life and death. Similar methods would be used again, of course, a few decades later. Fisher's work would also go on to inform the Nuremberg laws of 1935, outlawing intermarriage between Jews, blacks, and other Germans. He became a member of the Nazi Party in 1940.
Natural synergy. I will say, I do wonder how the fuck they used this. Because I feel like I've seen white people with blonde hair, with raven black hair, with ginger hair, and with brunette hair. Like, you'd think they would just look at your skin color, right? Like, not that I'm advocating for ways to optimize genocide in any means, but like, how do you even... How? Like, not even why, not even the ethical concerns behind it. How do you look at someone's hair color to determine their race? It seems almost entirely unrelated. I guess I've only ever seen, like, I've never seen a race be ginger except for white people. But I've seen white people have every other hair color. They were just min-maxing? I don't think they were. I think they were just shooting people at random. It's like, and I'm not surprised by that either, but I guess, I don't know. I don't know if like half white, half black people have very certain hair color, but like, I don't think so. Not that I fucking know of. This just feels like if you use this to compare people's, if you use this to compare people's hair colors, this feels like you would just be shooting people at random. You could end up shooting a white person with this. Like, I assume they looked at the skin too, but I just don't understand.
The Imperial Boomerang.
Measuring hair types with colors just doesn't work logically? Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's just more... I mean, yeah, the phrenology stuff is like, well, we genocide people for space, and they give me a post hoc reason. Yeah. I'm black. I'm half black and half white, and I have black hair, but my skin is blatantly brown. Yeah, again, you'd think... Wouldn't you just look at their skin color? Like, what, for lack of a better example, like, wouldn't you literally just do the Family Guy thing, where you had that palette and you would look at their skin color, and if they were darker than a certain shade of white, you would just kill them? I mean, I'm not surprised the eugenicists that seem very stupid and inefficient tend to have, but you know, it's just
a phrase coined by Aimé Césaire.
Weirdly, it is just stuck
by his student
in my brain.
Frantz Fanon, explains how the repressive structures imposed upon
and hair texture, yeah, that would work too. Not color.
Force will come home to roost, both psychologically through desensitization and materially.
Yep.
Just as Fisher's race science in Namibia was turned on his compatriots at home, we can see how mass surveillance technology developed and experimented upon Palestinian residents in the West Bank has been exported far and wide, from the UAE to Mexico to Morocco, and even back into the imperial core, with Catalan's pro-independence movement being spied on using Israeli tech.
Fights your survival instincts if they are in your way.
The Laboratory is a shocking chronicle of how directly the
Might have to
repression
read
and
this at some point.
extermination of the Palestinian people.
There's a lot of
feeds
good books
back
recommended
into
in this
state
video.
repression at home. Of course, it's not just Israel. During the anti-ICE protests in LA, MQ-9 Reaper drones were flown over the streets to monitor the protesters.
You might be familiar with these MQ-9 Reaper drones from the Boy Boy video we watched on Cuba. These are the ones that can blow up entire fishing boats instantly. The ones that have been blowing up entire fishing boats instantly in the waters around Cuba. They flew these over U.S. citizens in L.A. To my understanding, they didn't do anything with them in the sense of they didn't blow up any groups of people, I don't think. But if they just wanted cameras in the sky, they could have had them. They didn't need it to be the Reaper drones. Why do you think they were there? Just in case, maybe. Just in case.
Those are the same drones currently being used by the US government to bomb Yemen.
Yep.
It's all one struggle.
Yep.
Returning to the fascist...
The actual answer is that what is considered white is whatever is convenient for the powers that be. It is because it's a socioeconomic status similar to a caste. They would just make shit up to say you're not white when it suits them. Very fair. They just want to shoot people without thinking about race or anything for that matter. Yeah, that is kind of my point, is that the system is so inherently flawed to even the smallest amount of thought that I feel like pretty clearly they just don't care. They're just shooting Namibians for fun, I guess. These people don't... My point is, these maniacs don't even buy their own Kool-Aid. I don't think they actually even care about, like, the relative whiteness of anyone. It's just, you're in Namibia, so you're going to die.
Regimes of the past, Hitler himself directly compared his policy of Lebensraum, the German colonization of Eastern Europe, to Manifest Destiny, saying 3 months after the invasion of the USSR,
does sound a lot like it, doesn't it?
There's only one duty, to Germanize this country by immigration of Germans and to look upon the natives as
slur for Native Americans. It is crazy to just... Once again, by the way, world-renowned speechwriter Hitler A. It is still so crazy to see Hitler cited in, like, MLA format or whatever. Just looking at the fucking citation and seeing a Hitler A always just makes me weirdly uneasy.
Of Americans. Nazi officials claimed explicitly to be fighting a colonial war in countries like Ukraine, describing such
Reaper drones why? It's a good question. I wonder.
Among slur for black people.
Yeah.
And if they had been successful in conquering the Slavic territories, would have instituted a hunger plan, a policy of intentional starvation which would have blockaded and starved a planned 30 million people in the Western USSR.
By the way, this is just what the States is doing to Cuba right now. So, again, they all have the same playbook.
Starvation, which had already been enacted in established occupations of Soviet territory, which had killed 7 million Soviet citizens, Jews and Gentiles
and
alike.
Gaza? Oh yeah, in lots of places.
This policy of creating
just relevance to what we've been talking about for Cuba, but yes, absolutely.
Is, of course, a significant element of American, British, and other colonial histories.
Yup.
These crimes against humanity, internal and external, are not solely justified with racist bunk or conspiracy theories, but also with economic pragmatism. There are any number of atrocities that have been committed against indigenous people on the claim that a settler exclave would gain more value from the stolen land. Or
Yeah. It is one of my greatest shames as a human being to have at one point bought that propaganda.
Where people, even today, question why the state ought to provide the ability for disabled people who can't contribute to society to live. Language couched
We love
exclusively
ableism.
in terms of economic product.
I think ableism is one of the parts of, like, one of the bigotries of our society that is oftentimes, it's overlooked by a lot of people. It is not taken, quote unquote, like as seriously, I guess, as things like sexism and racism, homophobia, things like this. But I mean, really, it is right there, and it's so baked in. Like I just, I've been saying things have been insane this whole time, which is probably not the words I should be using. But language policing aside, it is also just, it leads to some of and all of these when you go down the pipe are lead to some of the most tragic, fucking horrific shit we've ever done to human beings. Ableism's right there, though, right? All this eugenics talk and this idea that, well, if you can't contribute to society, shouldn't you just die? Shouldn't we just force sterilize you? These are the end points of ableism, and it often goes more unchecked, it feels like, than a lot of other bigotries. It's a lot more normal for people.
Activity.
Anyone that doesn't work, says they can't work, it doesn't matter what the reason is, should not live comfortably. The
Burn in hell.
real scandal here is the
I remember this.
phenomenal, unfair transfer of wealth from those that work to those that don't work.
Bro, how do you do it? I think idiots like this guy are the reason that people came up with the horseshoe theory, to try and just resolve the, how could you possibly be so stupid, so fucking close, and end up on the exact opposite side of the spectrum? How did you manage this? It's very obvious. It's a very obvious other side of the coin to hustle culture, which makes such an easy endpoint for people who don't think too hard. Yeah.
Fascism begins outside the borders of the developing fascistic metropole, both geographically and politically. Germany's first concentration
Why don't
camp
they
was
just
in
say we hate
Namibia,
everybody and want to
all of the
destroy
Nazi
everything
death
already?
camps during the
They're getting closer, man. They're getting closer and closer to just directly saying that with every passing day. I swear, half of the fucking bills that Trump has been passing in the US might as well be titled the "You're all going to die and I'm going to sell your bones on the black market" bill. Like, they are just one day, like, we're not very far out from literally the kill everybody who I don't like bill, like, being named that genuinely in Congress and passing.
Holocaust.
Saying what the real goals are out loud isn't as marketable. It isn't as marketable, but they have done it often before because it's terrorism. They have done it in imperialist contexts quite often before because it functions as good terrorism, right? There's a reason the CIA declassifies their documents. They don't have to do that, right? But it's good to let people know what they did to other countries who went against them, so you make sure that you never do that shit. It's not marketable, but it can be effective in the imperialist sense. Doing it domestically, Rob is right. Right? Doing it domestically, they still have to dance around it a little bit. Democrats will be like, well, we don't like the name, so maybe we could push for a name change. The rest seems good, though. Yeah, and there you go. You have basically found the difference between Democrats and Republicans. That's in how loud they're willing to be about the kill everyone bill.
Auschwitz.
They use euphemisms for their goals like state rights over authoritarianism to make it sound more palatable to moderates until eventually the moderates aren't strong enough to fight back. Yes, domestically, you're absolutely right. In imperialist contexts, they often literally, like, in their fucking internal communications, say things like, we're going to make the economy scream, or like, directly talk about how they're going to make everyone in Cuba unemployed and starve to death. And they'll just say that shit in, like, declassified communications. You know?
Belzec,
But domestically, you're absolutely
Plempo
correct.
were all established on occupied foreign soil.
Their PR is non-existent anyway, might as well be honest. You'd be surprised. Their PR is still very powerful. Believe it or not. A lot of, I think most people, if you told them that the US is one of the most evil countries in the history of the world, competing only with a handful of other white colonialist nations, but, like, if you count all of those as kind of an alliance block, as they have been for the past 100 or so years, and say that that is, like, the greatest axis of evil that the entire world has maybe ever seen in its entire history. In fact, I mean, if you want to say that, like, there's a block that is, like, the US the UK, Spain, France, Canada. Canada's, mostly there as the attack dog for the rest of these countries, but does their own atrocities too, don't you worry. But if you want to say that, like, the US, Canada, Spain, France, Portugal, and England or something is all, like, Italy as well, Germany for the past little bit, though Germany obviously had its points where it broke off from this alliance. If you want to say that has been like one power block for the past 100 years, that is the axis of evil. That is the most evil group that the world, in the entire history of humankind, has ever seen. I think if you say that to most people, I think they would be like, "What? Nah." Most liberals, unfortunately, liberalism is still probably the dominant political philosophy in these countries. Don't forget the British Empire. That's why I said the UK. So, like, if you were to tell them that, like, these are the fucking evil country, this is the axis of evil, these are the greatest evils that humanity has ever seen, I think a lot of people would at least be like, "What do you mean by that?" Their PR works a lot better than we want it to. That's why part of this is still we need to, talk about the man-made horrors, unfortunately, within our comprehension, because of the fact that you have to break the mind control.
Similarly,
the brainwashing.
Mass detention and concentration camps.
That
are
one
being
Trump tweet about
organised by
ending a
modern
civilization.
Western
Yep,
nations,
it's terrorism.
but all of them either symbolically floating and detached from the mainland, or filled in agreement with similarly minded foreign governments.
Good old
But as
alligator
resistance
Alcatraz
to this
and
momentum fails
Venezuelan
to stop
Guantanamo too.
those camps are coming closer and closer to home.
Yup.
For capitalism to survive dire crises, it welcomes fascist repression. But for fascism to survive, it must redefine what acceptable repression looks like. Today, it would be unconscionable for the Trump regime to execute people with disabilities, and his joke to the El Salvadoran president that the next to be deported will be the homegrowns is rightfully railed against. But RFK's rhetoric about putting an end to autistic children and the terrifying paramilitary ICE raids are all pushing the needle into the fun zone at a horrifying pace.
The Overton window
And
is
before
shifting.
2016, much of what Trump has already gotten away with was also unthinkable, at least this openly. Disabled campaigners in the UK, for example, have been fighting our current government's cutting of personal independence payments, which will demonstrably lead to hardship and death for disabled people. And this is just the latest in a long list of eugenic-adjacent anti-disabled policies, from previous tough decision cuts to disability benefits, or even more horrific, like do not resuscitate orders being issued by doctors for disabled and elderly people during the first waves of COVID without the patient's knowledge or consent.
That's crazy.
Additionally, much of what people in the Imperial Core are reckoning with now was already happening to uncountable people throughout the world who resided in the abstract, the acceptable, or the complicated realm of geopolitical conflict. As Césaire writes, before they were its victims, they were its accomplices. That they tolerated that Nazism before it was inflicted on them, that they absolved it, shut their eyes to it, legitimized it, because, until then, it had been applied only to non-European peoples. That they have cultivated that Nazism, that they are responsible for it, and that before engulfing the whole edifice of Western Christian civilization in its redded waters, it oozes, seeps, and trickles from every crack.
And this is why it doesn't matter that it's not happening here that bad just yet. Because even if your survival instincts tell you that they just make it too difficult to empathize with the people of Gaza, for example, like that hard, it's coming. If you don't want that shit to happen to you, then you should care about it now. You should have cared about it 10 years ago. Some of y'all were 8 when that happened. But theoretically, like the best time to care about it was as early as possible. The second best time is right now, right? Because even if even in the most like Machiavellian sense where you only care about you and yours, it's coming. Oh, it's coming. So you gotta start right now, while you still have your privilege and your power. Relative
it should be remembered
privilege
that
and
Niemöller,
power.
for all the work he did opposing Nazism after they came to power, had been a voter and vocal supporter of the party up until their policies directly began to restrict his religious practice.
Yep.
First They Came is not a confession of cowardice, but of complicity. This strikes at the core of the conflation between communism and fascism, between revolution and counter-revolution. Scholars like Traverso, by no means an apologist for the USSR, directly tackles the superficial banner of totalitarianism, pointing out the stark differences between the ideological and economic roots of the two systems. Fascism achieved a fusion of three different struggles: a colonial assault against the Slavic world,
Sure.
a political struggle against communism in the Soviet Union, and a racial fight against the Jews, into a unique war of conquest and extermination. This means that its model could not be Bolshevism. It would be more relevant and coherent to find its model in the colonial wars of the 19th century, which
10
were
years ago,
actually
hell.
conceived by European imperialist powers as the appropriation of living space, a colossal...
You know what that means? I mean, this is just a fancy way to say that I'm 11 years older than you, I think. But that means that I was older 10 years ago than you are now, which is fun. That's fun. That's fun to think about. That means you're 16 now, and I would have been 17 10 years ago.
Plundering of the conquered territories, a process of enslavement of the indigenous peoples, and, according to a social Darwinist model, the destruction of the indigenous peoples. The historical laboratory for Nazi crimes was not Bolshevik Russia, but the colonial past of Western civilization.
Yes.
In the classical era of industrial capitalism, imperialist colonialism, and political liberalism.
Being old.
Simplistic
I'm not old. I'm a young man.
framing
You're just a baby.
at best, born from the ignorance of the ongoing crimes of the so-called rational center, and, at worst, a means to disguise the liberal free market roots of Nazism, because, as Walter Rodney says, they would like some of the bitterness against
being
fascism
old is fucked up.
to be transferred to those
yes,
who would
it's
seek
true. Let's not be ageist. 2, I'm not old. I'm 27.
Constructs.
Like, I am, on the grand scale of human civilization, barely even an adult.
Socialism. I do recommend people read Rodney's
I'm like very recently an adult.
From the Third World for some sharp analysis of both the revolution and subsequent regime's conditions, flaws, and triumphs.
Okay, you got a good 3 years till 30, brother. There's nothing wrong with 30.
Fascism. Yes, it is.
Dan Brickstead and I are age buddies.
Yeah. Revolutionary. Yes, it is an opportunistic movement, historic in its valorization of fraudsters and profiteers. But that doesn't change the fact that millions of people who would reject the label of fascist have voted in favor of its primacy. The imperial boomerang does not only shape political architects, with characters like Farage insisting that Britain has nothing to apologize for regarding its colonial past.
That's crazy. I don't think I should apologize for what people did 300 years ago. It was a different world, a different time. It's such a misrepresentation, man. Nobody says that you, Nigel Farage, implemented colonialism in like India or something. It's, it's just, I mean, what are you gonna say to Nigel fucking Farage, right? Like, you're gonna talk to him about like, oh, but yeah, the system that was set up by that is still perpetuated today, and his eyes are gonna glaze over. The words are too big for him.
Imperialism and national chauvinism also shapes the psychology of worker movements, as Lenin observed America's position in the early decades of the 20th century.
Panthe?
In the United States, immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe are engaged in...
You're the one slightly embarrassed about your age, bro? I'm not slightly embarrassed. It's just always interesting to put into context. You know what I mean? In certain, like, it's like when you say, oh, bro, did you know that Skyrim was, Skyrim is older than your ass. You're about the same age as Skyrim, But yeah, it's just more about contextualizing the age. It's like, oh, like, I can't believe that, Skyrim is fucking 15 years old or whatever the hell as a video game. And it's like, whoa, I feel like I didn't play it that long ago or something. Or I'm playing 3 Houses right now for the second time. And I realized that, when I played that game, I was like 19 or 20 or something like that. I think it came out 7 years ago. And then I was talking about all of these different like Fire Emblem characters and like, oh, like, the ones that I found attractive or whatever. And now I'm like, bro, even post time skip, some of these people are like severely like problematic age gap with my ass. What happened?
Most poorly...
You aren't saying every random Brit needs to apologize to the nation's representative need to, as well as make changes to stop perpetuating nonviolent oppression against those groups. Nobody gives a fuck about you saying sorry either, in fact. Like, the reality is, nobody cares, right? Nobody cares about, like, if you, Nigel Farage, say sorry to the people ravaged by British colonialism, how the fuck does that help? No one is asking you to say sorry. People are asking for things to get better. Because the same system that was fucking implemented is, by and large, in place today, right? No one gives a fuck if you say sorry. It's useless. It's virtue signaling at its finest.
paid occupations.
I'm 25 and I just reached the age where some coworkers aren't surprised at how young I am. Yeah, man.
Whilst American workers provide the highest percentage of
Nigel Farage does
overseers
also have a lot
or
to
the better
apologize
paid
for. So
workers.
true.
Imperialism
You can kill
has
two
the
birds with one
tendency
stone.
to
Yeah,
create
yeah.
privileged sections even among the workers and to detach
The only way to send a message to someone like Nigel Farage is through the means of high velocity dairy products. Oh, that sentence ended and how differently than I thought it would. I was gonna say no Fed posting, please. The point of the verbal apology is primarily just a form of acknowledgement from those in power, but the actual actions are far more important. Yeah. The first step is acknowledging that there is a problem, right? But you can't just stop there.
proletarian masses. He saw how the exploitation of foreign nations by any given empire and its monopolistic position on the world
guys are
market,
upside down.
which Gramsci would later develop
upside
into
down
his
Nazis.
hegemonic theory, created a section of the proletariat whose nations would become socially bourgeois, and a further section of workers willing to be led by bourgeois leaders, or at least those amenable to bourgeois order. This is how we get the perplexing sight of working class builders attacking peace demonstrators, or union leadership refusing to cut funding for anti-worker imperialist political parties.
This is like the capitalist communist version of like internalized misogyny or something like that, internalized anti-blackness. It's like that, but along the economic axis. It's somehow they've convinced blue collar workers to hate unions, for example.
In seeking relative short-term improvement for one's own personal standing, not only have reactionary elements of the working class, even elements organized in the workers' movement, broken the prospects, trust, and bodies of other members of their class, but they also have kept themselves forever locked away from any truly liberatory potential.
You only become an ally if and only if you can risk your station to take radical action, or better yet, help enable those same marginalized groups to organize said action themselves. Yes, it is usually not going, the best that you could do essentially is help the people who are actually, marginalized to take action, in my understanding, because what the fuck am I gonna do to solve women's problems? I don't fucking know. I'm
potentials.
Reluctance.
Best I can do is help them do their shit and get out of the way.
Or under the heel of imperialism, the Palestinian people
at worst get out of the way.
Is not only inhumane, but also sabotages one's own fight. Again, the same tech used to surveil teenagers in the West Bank is being sold to companies and governments who use it to spy on labor organizers, queer rights campaigners, and climate activists. It's all one struggle.
Very true.
Rejecting that reality puts everyone in peril. We have yet to understand, Baldwin said in 1987, that if I am starving, you are in danger. People think that my danger makes them safe. They're in trouble. Additionally, the idea that a majority of people who have voted for fascistic policy platforms were simply duped, winners of the Fell for It Again award, or aren't aware of basic injustices planned or currently being carried out, is unrealistic. Misinformation does play a role in gathering support for repression, as any number of
a lot of it is just turning a blind eye.
Ignorant Trump supporters demonstrates. But it's also easy to save face by feigning regretful ignorance when the platform you supported ends up hurting you or doing Nazi shit. Even when they chastise Trump for overstepping his promises, proponents of the administration often do so while still valorizing his original agenda. Destroying the well-being of minorities and considering the
don't appreciate the fact that the solution for these problems for so long we didn't do it because brainwashing.
Sacrifices if it means getting what you think.
Because some people, if said solutions are implemented, some people lose a lot of money.
Ever at best extend privilege in the short term, and at worst get us all fucking murdered. Fascism thrives in apathy, in you accepting the new status quo, in you occasionally saying, "God, isn't it awful?" and then going back to brunch. It thrives in the void left by a fragmented community, where social services are cut, where your workplace is designed to separate you from your colleagues, and where the idea of getting 10 people together to do something about a problem in your neighborhood seems an impossible feat.
Organize.
Feeling disconnected and powerless,
the isolation is not an accident.
Not community and agency, but conformity and benign submission. You can have connections again, based not on the hard work of meeting your neighbors, getting to know your workplace, or involving yourself in local clubs. I mean, who even wants that, really? Didn't
Give that
Sartre
money to
say
us,
that
we would say,
hell
well,
is other people?
give it all to me, actually.
feel it,
Just
right?
me.
All those
I can be the
idiots
world's
who just
first
can't stop fucking
quadrillionaire.
it up for the rest of us? Amassed individuals, cutthroat, selfish and uncaring? No, you can have connection passively by virtue of the
Me at the
sigil on
brick
your
store.
passport.
What's up, communism
And
motion?
sure,
What's
it'll
up,
mean a whole
LOB?
bunch of people are
Remember
made
learning
to
for the first time they had
miss
research that
out in
pointed
one
toward
way or
man-made
another,
climate
but
change in
I'm
like the
not talking
70s and
about you.
80s? Made me feel like puking. Oh yeah.
You don't even have to do anything yourself.
Oh yeah.
Unless you want to. Relax. It's just the undesirables we're dealing with. The terrorists, the corruptors of
Before
youth,
this gets to, it's not just brainwashing. Revolution is scary. Decide to do the thing that feeds me in order to fight for a maybe future if the plan goes correct. Oh yeah. No. I'm saying the fact that the system at hand won't allow us to implement the solutions is unfortunately why the revolution becomes necessary. I think, at least how I interpreted Apollo's message, is this idea that right now, as is, if the world wasn't run by a bunch of evil motherfuckers, a lot of these problems could be fixed, if not actively like improving significantly. Right? The fact that it's not, the fact that that's not happening, which is where Apollo's message ends, is why we then have to do the scary thing, unfortunately, right? And I agree, it is very scary. The fact that these solutions are not being implemented because of propaganda and systemic rot. The next step then is unfortunately why we have to do the scary thing, which is very scary. But again, it gets a lot less scary if there are a couple 100 million of you.
life unworthy of life. You don't
Seeing an increasingly large number of white men realize they were some of the biggest beneficiaries of the DEI initiatives they were propagandized to push back against has been ironic but painful to watch. Right? Yeah. We could have all been Wakanda. I mean, not Wakanda. Isolationism is bad, but still fair. Wakanda in like
seriously
the
contend that those
society
people
if sense, you know.
deserve liberal kid gloves.
Maybe not all the foreign
They'll
policy
be
of
taken from
Wakanda.
other places. They'll go somewhere far away. You won't even have to look outside if you don't want to. You don't even have to check to see if we're being honest. Isn't it easier to trust us? To know your lineage? To know your place? Isn't the world so beautiful if you just pretend it is? Hell is separate.
So that's where we stopped last time. My God, in hindsight, what a fucking stopping point, huh? What a fucking stopping point. We'll keep going now, but yeah, that was, I cannot believe that we just ended last time there, but I was tired, man. I was tired. Yeah, and the scary thing should come way after educating, having infrastructure set up to not just create some violence for no purpose. Yeah, and community, and again, like in fact, the scary thing cannot happen until those things happen, because there's no way that you will organize enough people for the scary thing to happen without, again, like you know, the example that I learned about recently that is always just such a good example of this is the Panthers, right? People always think, I think most people who like don't know that much about the Panthers, myself included, when we think about the Panthers, we think of just like, okay, like they are, you know, they're Black Power activists, but they are like the more militant end of these things, right? Like if like MLK's "I Have a Dream" speech is on like one side, then like the Panthers are on the other, are on the gun-toting side, right? But it's like, how did the Panthers even get to the point where they had enough community support that they could actually get anything done at all? Free breakfast programs, like after school shit for kids, like childcare and shit, like the you know, even the you know, the quote unquote like more militaristic end of it. Nothing can be done until infrastructure and community and mutual aid is set up, because the most important thing that you need for any of this to be able to occur is lots of people who all agree, right? So you're definitely right. Convincing the military to join our side is going to be a necessity for revolution in my mind. Yeah, I mean, the good news is the military is by and large still full of people. In fact, often they are poorer than the average person. They join the military because of economic circumstances, right? They need schooling, they need Honda Civic, etc., etc. You could say the thing you need is community. Call it communityism. That's like, it's just too. It's a little clunky, right? Drop the T, it's closer. Wait, fuck. I fucked up the quote. Drop the T, it's cleaner. Drop the T. It's cleaner. Yeah. I feel like we can make it flow a lot better. Just communism. But then that's still a little communism. Communism. That two eyes. Communism. Communism. Yeah, there you go. It's an ideology based on the fact that community and mutual aid is the only thing that can bail us out of the situation that we're currently in. Communityism is a little too clunky, so we could just call it communism. I think I like that a lot.
Uncommunicability, self-centeredness.
Just completely unrelated. Has anyone ever watched one of those Love and Deep Space ASMRs? I'm bringing it up for no reason, of course.
Lust for power, for riches, for fame. Heaven, on the other hand, is very simple and very hard. Caring about your fellow beings, and that's possible on a sustained basis only in collectivity. Hell is other people. That's only that side of the coin. The other side, which no one seems to mention, is also heaven is each other.
That is crazy, man. I never realized that the hell is other people guy literally said, but heaven is also other people. How did this get away from me? We listen and we don't judge, Brick. Listen, man, I gave Zayn a hand job. Was it because I was listening to like one of my friends was, well, actually a lot of my friends are very into Love and Deep Space, and they were like, listen to this shit, and you know, basically when you listen to the ASMR, you inhabit the protagonist, and I gave Zayn that hand job. It might be, the game might claim to be 13 plus, and nothing explicit happens on the screen, but I know what a hand job sounds like, and I gave him a hand job.
The most important lesson to learn from fascism is that it is a deeply unstable ideology that can be collapsed by resistance. But it's better to nip it in the bud early. The second best time, if you're wondering, is right now.
I think I'm pretty good at it.
In the UK, for example, the BUF was defeated before it got seriously close to power because a bunch of East End communists, Christians, Jews and Muslims beat the shit out of its leadership during a parade. Fascism needs a deified figure, a sacred head on Leviathan to maintain itself, which is why most fascist movements don't survive long after something happens to their leader, or if even the individual fascists themselves are made to feel vulnerable. This is exemplified by the Battle of Cable Street, which was an embarrassing rout for Mosley's black shirts and a major factor in Benito Mussolini's decision to cease funding the party in the build-up to World War II, leading to its collapse. It cannot be overstated just how important one Sunday spent punching the snot out of a gaggle of Nazis was for the people of the UK. I also really cannot recommend Dutt's book on fascism and social revolution.
Again, though, you wanna get all your friends together and beat the shit out of some Nazis. You gotta have a lot of friends. Global JJK style jumping will win us the fight, yeah. But the thing about Jump Jutsu Kaisen that you might remember, they always had the numbers advantage. If you don't have the numbers advantage, there's no jumping to be had. So, once again, man, friends. The literal power of friendship. Apologies for disappearing. I had to get up and grab the remote for my air conditioner. When you said Zayn, I thought of the Grimnir. That is true. I did not give Zayn a hand job. I'm thinking of Zayn from now defunct gotcha game Love and Deep Space. Zayn the Grimnir, I did not give a hand job. But you know, if he like asked nicely enough, I don't know. That's right, Rob.
Enough. For a text being written in the mid-1930s,
fascism spreads by encouraging isolation. Left-wing ideologies spread by reaching out to the isolated.
And there are so many lessons that we can still learn from it.
What do you say?
For a text being cannot recommend Dutt's book on fascism and social revolution enough. For a text being written in the mid-1930s, it often reads as if it could have been published last week. There are so many lessons that we can still learn from it. To be clear, that is a terrible thing.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Okay, the Grimnir players can use seals to self-fellate. They're not portals, right? You know that. They're not portals from Portal. I can't do that. What happened to Love and Deep Space? This is a very, very, very abridged summary. But basically, Love and Deep Space started off as a gotcha game marketed at women with cute boys in it. It from China. A lot of the boys looked the same, basically, and they were all very white, but, you know, whatever. It started off relatively normal, and it got freakier and more boundary pushing with basically every banner. We're talking soft confirmations of incest, some, like, actual grooming. This is, you know, later on into the life cycle, but, you know, like, it started to really push the boundaries. A lot of people who weren't as down with that stopped playing the video game, right? And the people who are left, who are like, yes, man, yes, like they loved that shit, are obviously strange people. At one point, Love in Deep Space releases a new boy who is slightly bulkier and also a werewolf, but I don't think that was actually the problem. Slightly bulkier than the average, like, sort of Chinese, like, twunk fantasy, right? And because they have basically, at this point, this is, you know, more recent, at this point, the only people left playing their game are a bunch of freaks. Like, the least mentally stable people who were playing your game at the start are now the only people left playing your game. They got accused of being genocide apologists. Don't ask. But releasing this wolf boy ended up with them being apologists for Unit 731 and the atrocities that Imperial Japan committed against China. They ended up on the local news. They had to cancel the boy, and they lost a shit ton of money, and the game has basically fallen from grace since then. This is my very high level, and also, I'm not an expert by any means, but, like, I was kind of tangentially around, as you know, a lot of my friends were very into it. The moral of the story is, when you do some, like, really freaky shit, and, like, how we go from werewolf boy to that, the slightly more detailed part is the werewolf boy was slightly bulkier, and slightly more, like, masculine in, like, a Western traditional sense, I guess. So the Chinese audience, which, again, at this point, both audiences, the only audiences left were, like, incredibly entitled and, like, mentally unstable people who were okay with incest and grooming, right? So, you know, both audiences, at this point, are you know, not the best. But anyway, this boy is a little bit bulkier and a little bit more traditionally masculine, and they were accused of, like, not caring about the Chinese audience and only marketing to the West, and then, like, I guess, like, erosion of Chinese culture, and somehow it got to Unit 731 apologism from there. You can sort of see the line drawn from, like, you don't care about our country, right? You don't care about our country and our culture and our values, to you are an apologist for Imperial Japan. Like, you could see how, like, a couple of the most fucked up people in, like, a 4chan group could end up getting that shit to the national news if they reframe things just the right way, right? I'm not even saying, by the way, oh, you know, boo-hoo, poor billion-dollar corporation. It's just more so, it really is a lesson in the tolerance paradox a little bit, right? When you do a bunch of, like, you know, I want to stop saying both insane and crazy, because to my understanding, not that not the policing your language is going to help anyone who actually has any kind of disability, but, you know, it's nice to at least put in the effort, I think. I'll say wild, I guess. It's a lesson in that when you do some wild shit, and you notice there's a bunch of people who are, like, not super into it, right? And then there are some people that are very, very into it. Maybe don't go, oh, well, some people like it, so let's just keep going. Because maybe what you're doing is courting the least stable parts of your fan base or community, and then over time, as you keep sort of shaving this down, you will only be left with those people. Right? It's not surprising why so many games that are popular in China have issues with diverse face and body types, and this happens from the louder, more extreme, more radical fans who diversify. And I must say, diversify that boy looks so much like the other boys. He has a slightly more defined jawline, and he is about 3% larger. To me, to the actual Western perspective that they are apparently, that Infold is apparently catering to and completely ignoring the Chinese fan base, I'm like, that is the same East Asian K-pop twunk that I have seen forever. There is fundamentally no difference between that guy and Caleb or Silas or something like that, you know? But apparently, it is such a radical departure from the norm because the acceptable beauty standard is so thin that making him 3% larger is literally fascism, I guess. But I mean, again, I got no love lost for Infold. This is more so a it's a case study on what happens when you do it to yourself, right? They did it to themselves. It is a case study on the tolerance paradox, I think, right? It is a case study on slowly but surely courting the most rabid parts of your fan base because they are willing to spend a lot of money on the really rabid stuff. And then you're left. This is basically the Niedermüller poem, right? First they came, first, I guess, but it's kind of reversed because you're the one doing it. It's like, first I came for the people who were grossed out by incest, and I did nothing when they left because the incest lovers gave me a lot of money. Then I came for the people who were grossed out by grooming, and I did nothing when they left because the groomers gave me a lot of money. Then everyone who I'd courted thus far came for me, and there was no one left to support my decisions. They kind of did it to themselves. I don't have English words to describe my reaction to that. No, you're right. Let's keep talking about fascism. It's honest. Genuinely, modern fascism and the Trump regime is probably more understandable to me than the Chinese female gacha game fan base. It was super homophobic too, right? Like there was some very, very not even undertones. There were some extreme homophobic overtones to these complaints too, saying that this again, I cannot stress how similar they look, but in their minds, that this larger, more muscular guy was appealing to gay people, which they really didn't like. They wanted to keep the gays out of their game, right post haste. So, you know, oppression of one is oppression of all, or something.
The thing about fascism is that it's molded around a kernel of truth. Whilst there are definitely rabid zealots who are in it to enact violence in the name of a fictional racist conspiracy,
ladies, we can love men together. It doesn't have to be this way. That's what I'm saying.
The majority of those swayed by its politics end up there because something in their life is going wrong, and fascism not only gives them the easy answer, but is sometimes the loudest voice talking about the problem at all. Time and time again,
This is why we need a left-wing radicalization pipeline. Because if one side is yelling, I know your life sucks and you can fix it by killing all of the brown people, and the other side is saying nothing except talking in very, academic circles about the nuances of whether or not, X or Y or Z thing is technically whatever. We lose people, right? Sometimes you just have to say it in fucking plain English. Sometimes you just have to say the billionaires are ruining your life and we need to get rid of them. And in the short term, we have to at least curtail their power.
Governments are faced with a crisis produced by private profiteering or slashed social spending, two qualities indicative of neoliberalism. They then respond in line with their ideology, either by privatizing further, promising that this wave of for-profit ownership over common goods will
I think the reason why the far-left pipeline isn't really as obvious is because fascists are able to disguise what they truly believe to make it more digestible to outsiders. That's true. I mean, it's also in the sense of it's also in the sense of one of these machines is funded by the state and the system, and the other one is working in opposition to it. So one of them just has a lot more resources and mobilization behind it naturally, right? So there's a lot more work. You're pushing a boulder uphill on the other side, but I do understand women wanting to have something for them, not justifying homophobia, but I understand not liking the same thing for you as a woman now also being for men. No, I know, but the point is that maybe this is something where I can't speak with a ton of confidence, but I don't see a reason why I don't see why gay men playing and enjoying your game makes it not for you suddenly. You know what I mean? I know it's an oversimplification, and I understand that idea, but like, I don't know. I personally, I don't really see the argument. You know what I mean? I understand that. I do know that, you know, gay men are still men, and they are socialized in a very different way. And what gay men tend to find attractive in men, to my understanding, is pretty different from what straight women or tend to find attractive in men, right? So like, I understand how there can certainly be ways where it's catering to this instead of this, and now becomes, you know, less for the women, and they lose out on things that way. I could see how in an extreme case or in a more significant case, I could see that. But on the one side, this guy really was just so fucking similar to the others. And on the other side, the idea that you don't, I want to point out, there are 5 boys in this game who are all, at least from what I can gather, very popular with the female gaze, right? If there was one that was popular with gay men, I feel like that's not necessarily losing your hobby. But obviously, I mean, I'm neither gay as a man, nor am I a woman, so it's not my place to speak at all. But it did strike me as homophobia more than anything, right? Even if it was coming from an understandable place. When I saw it, it did just strike me primarily as, like, get the gays out of my space. Might derail being the video. It'd be funny if it was. Maybe it'll be a whole other video, because men are part of a different group. If something for your is for your group, and you can all be a community of people in your group, and it's a safe space away from men. Probably don't want some men in it. That's fair. That's fair. That is fair. I do understand that. In this case specifically, I can see how it's just homophobia, but the concept's understandable. No, I agree. Like, again, if it were, I guess if it looked more like that, then maybe I could hear it out a little better, right? But that is a good point. That, yes, gay men are absolutely still men, are absolutely still socialized as men. And even if they do not represent the same, like, you know, sexual, like, threat, like, literal, like, predatory threats to women, they are still men. It just really wasn't that big of a departure from the existing standard, you know? And as a result, bringing it up as like, but what if this attracts more gays to my game, really did just feel like exclusionary. Really just feels exclusionary, right? Your life is being ruined by billionaires. You should shoot them and beat them with baseball bats and a megaphone and see what happens. I mean, that sounds silly, but like, the other side is literally saying your life is being ruined by immigrants who are eating the dogs, and we should get them out of the country and throw them in the water as soon as possible. Like, you know. You wouldn't, whether or not that will be effective, you wouldn't actually be escalating anything.
Damage caused last time, or by carrying on as if nothing is actually happening. One thinks of West Street.
But yes, Faf, it is a good point. It is a good point. And I definitely am not going to sit here and speak on why women shouldn't want the space with no men in it. That's not my point at all. It is something I hadn't considered, though. So it's good to point out. I appreciate it.
Was financed by donations from private health firms, threatening the NHS to either reform or die. Or
That's
one
fun.
may recall the infamous "nothing will fundamentally change" speech Biden gave shortly before winning the 2020 election. As we've seen from Mosley to Trump, fascists of all stages of development will appear to be the sole non-commie voice addressing the obvious crisis, even if they have no intention of doing anything structural about it. This explains the bizarre, if somewhat overstated, trend of Sanders or Corbyn voters switching to Trump and Reform, respectively.
Right.
They were politically awoken because someone was finally acknowledging a deep systemic flaw, and when that movement was snuffed out, they were captured by whoever was making the next loudest noise about the broken system.
My God.
Even if they're full of shit.
What was that, it was in the Operation Condor video where he was like, it's not enough to just be like, I hate the Nazis because they're Nazis. If you don't understand what it is about the Nazis that were evil, then you will just be swayed by anyone who points at something and goes, that's a Nazi, right? There needs to be like a word for this, because every time bringing it up it's always so verbose. But I mean, this is another great example of that, right? If someone says, if the only thing you know is that you don't like the system, anyone who says the system is flawed, including a literal fucking Nazi, is going to sound attractive to you. You need to know what it is about the system that you don't like and what you want to change, or else you will be swayed by whoever is making the next loudest noise about the broken system, even if they're full of shit, quote, unquote. Right?
When the normal state of things is broken, both sunlight and smoke can seep through the cracks. Just as the COVID pandemic led to the temporary abolition of homelessness in the UK, led by a right-wing Tory government, the failure of the organised working class to secure that...
It did what? It did what? It did what? I mean, I know COVID was a really good case study of how a lot of these unsolvable problems turned out to just not be priorities, right? And turns out that a lot of this stuff is doable, and we do in fact have the resources to make everyone's lives better, but we just don't because it's not priority. I know that about COVID, but also, I'm sorry, it did what? Let me just go back here in case you didn't hear what is having me react so strongly.
Normal state of things, COVID pandemic, both sunlight and smoke can seep through the cracks. Just as the COVID pandemic led to the temporary abolition of homelessness in the UK,
That's what? I mean, I feel like at this point I understand this theoretically, but it's like, it is something different to just see it get put into practice, huh? These motherfuckers really could just make it so no one was homeless anymore. If they wanted to, if they gave the slightest shit. Yes, abolition. That's right, abolition. Nuance is a buzzword. Nuance is a dog whistle. Anyone who tells, it's just, it's just, situation's so complicated right now. Not complicated. They don't give a fuck. That mean prevented homelessness or started cracking down more on the homeless? Based on what's here, people housed in hotels, leaving the streets deserted, and offering a golden opportunity. I think this was prevented homelessness. Abolition of homelessness is real and possible. It fucking happened, apparently. America also eradicated like half of its poverty during the COVID lockdowns. Yep.
led by a right-wing Tory government.
Yep.
Government, the failure of the organised working class to secure that abolition.
I wish nuance was real. It'd be nice.
The status quo reasserting itself and those people being evicted. The supposed leadership of the working class and union movement lent unending support to the re-emergence of the old, rather than engaging in the necessary struggle of birthing the new. This has categorically contributed to the mainstreaming of far-right movements, which, benefiting from the crushing of the left and unending liquid support from the capitalist class, have positioned their hyper-exploitative cruelty as a breath of some kind of air in comparison to established power.
There's a great
breath of
graphic
cheesy
manifesto
air.
of sorts, 12 Rules for Strife by Jeff Sparrow and Sam Warman.
12 rules for strife. Did Jordan Peterson parody this shit with his book? Or is this a parody of his? That is just a very similar. I mean, it could be a coincidence, but 12 rules for life, 12 rules for strife, right? One of these is a parody of the other. It's hard to say. Most black and white shit ever? Yeah. If various governments cared, much of the world would have accessible healthcare, UBI, and homelessness would drop drastically. There'd still be a number that live out of their cars by choice for some reason. I mean, if it's by choice, fucking go piss, girl. If anybody is experiencing whatever by choice, as long as it's not hurting anyone else, go piss, girl. But I think that's a very, very, very small minority, right?
Rule 6, choose strife, is the antidote to this way of thinking. It advocates for rejecting the comfortability of delegated politics, where you entrust a person or party to improve the world as a representation of you, instead choosing the strife of direct politics. People collectively organizing in order to become more powerful and to remove
Communism doesn't stop you from
ourselves
homesteading?
and
Yeah.
the world. You're not waiting for
Nuance is only real for anything other than politics. Yeah, like when I talk about whether or not, you know, when I talk about what the best class in Fire Emblem Three Houses is, that's a nuanced discussion, right? Because unfortunately, because Fire Emblem is, you know, everything is political, but some classes in Fire Emblem are gender locked, right? So it's like, well, can a class be, even if a class is incredibly powerful, is it the best class in the game if like half the units in the game don't have access to it? Right? How good is like Dark Flyer really if only the women can access it? How good is War Master and its quick riposte class mastery in Three Houses if only the men can access it? You know, how strong is this shit really? Is Battalion Wrath and Battalion Vantage the best abilities in the game because when put on exactly Dimitri together in Three Houses, you can create an invincible instant kill machine that exists that way from turn one and one-shots literally anything in the entire game for the entirety of the campaign except for multi-health bar monsters? Well, in that particular combination, that probably is the single strongest unit in the game, but only he can do it. So does that make that the strongest thing in the game if only one unit can do it? It's hard to say. That's a nuanced conversation, you know? Hunter's Volley is an incredibly strong combat art, but it's only available as a class mastery for the advanced class Sniper, which is footlocked, has significantly worse movement, and can't fly. Is that a good combat art? Because in a vacuum, it's very strong. High might, high accuracy, high crit, automatic doubling bow combat art that doesn't allow your opponent to retaliate first, but you have to be on kind of a bad class to get it. So that's a nuanced discussion. Whether or not, I'm not going to fed posts, but you know, etc., etc. Now there's no nuance in that. That shit is black and white. Hashtag let me ride Pegasus. That's what I'm saying, man. And let my women be War Masters. Do you have any idea how good Catherine would be as a War Master in Three Houses? Fucking save me.
Shea or Goldman to arise, you're doing the tough work of building a new world with others out of the supposed end of history. Rather than doing as liberals tend to, shying away from...
Kind of like asking what are the best sigils and mastery traits in Relink? Exactly. That's a nuanced conversation. There are lots of nuanced conversations to be had. This isn't one of them.
Unless it endangers the political candidacy of the other team's guy or girl. Women can be monsters too. Not non-binary people though. We're pretty sound.
Real. This fucking shit-eating grin, man.
They're standing right behind me, aren't they?
Oh, is that Elliot Page? They're not non-binary, are they?
We're pretty sound. They're standing right.
No, that's Ezra. What's his face? Ezra. What's their face? I suppose. Ezra Klein. Ezra Miller. Yeah. That's the Flash. Yeah, they're standing right behind me, aren't they?
Right behind me, aren't they?
Is building for offense and survival and comfort stronger in Monster Hunter? Nuanced. Should marginalized groups have equal rights and opportunities? Not nuanced. There you go.
Instead, on an individual level, you have to educate
Didn't they abuse some people or some shit? I don't know, man. Yeah, something like that. Possible. I can't remember either. Sexual assault, I think.
yourself as to what your specific forces of reaction are latching onto, and either redirect that outrage to a more accurate target, such as discouraging blaming disabled scroungers for tax burdens, and instead focusing on the minuscule amount of tax paid by the owning class, or by rallying behind positive counter-narratives when, for example, vile rhetoric about the corrupting cultural impact of refugees has no material concern attached to it and is purely racist hate.
Yep.
Meeting people where they're at is one thing, but soothing hate by talking past it, or even cynically trying to ride the wave of it, as some supposedly progressive politicians are presently doing, is opportunistic and self-defeating.
Sure.
It shouldn't be on your head to advocate for justice, peace, and humanity. You've got a lot on your plate already. But for every "it's not my job to educate you" online, there exists half a dozen Nazis botting their Substack into the replies of the burgeoning politically interested.
Yeah, the Nazis are very excited to educate people, unfortunately. Again, yeah. It's a pipeline.
But education
It's a pipeline
isn't
war. There needs to be another equal and opposite reaction,
That
at least.
consciousness needs to be channeled into organization, be
Yes.
it local action groups or national policy.
Yep.
Protest movements can have the effect of enacting change, but without a more revolutionarily minded follow-through, can have limited or even counterproductive results. Gelderloos and Bevans attribute many factors to the failures of uprisings in the 2010s, from
Failure of nonviolence and If We Burn, the mass protest decade and the missing revolution.
Tahrir to Occupy Wall Street, but both come to a similar conclusion that the failure to seize space, Gelderloos, or enact their demand through taking power, Bevans, are key factors that display both the revolutionary character of a movement or lack thereof, and can predict the long-term outcomes of such uprisings.
Is using your 5,000 bots online is against the rules and Nazis don't care about rules? I think in some ways, we need to stop caring about the rules too. Not in the, we should, kill everyone with a skin tone darker than X or Y or Z way, but in the, let's stop playing fair when it comes to fucking, let's propagandize, man.
It feels wrong to not address the so-called Gen Z revolutions that have sprung up throughout the globe whilst I've been producing this video, but their ongoing nature renders them deeply difficult to analyse in a piece of this length without the analysis being out of date by the time I finish working on it. Suffice to say that space has been seized and then...
Do Nazis care about anything? The ambiguous, glorious rebirth of their nation. I guess. That too. The making Germany great again. Or, some other country that has that slogan recently. I don't know. Hard to say. Definitely don't study history and notice that it's all the same fucking script over and over.
Some governments have been deposed, some...
It's just a moderate fantasy of letting the system do its thing and trusting the process while the process is actively being infiltrated by Nazis. Because if we just play by the book, it'll all work out in the end. What is that quote about? It was someone in Hitler's administration who was basically bragging about the fact that you can just burn democracy down in front of a liberal and all they'll do is organize breakout groups and communities to discuss it. Something like that. There is a quote like this that is a literal Nazi being like, oh, I'm so glad there are so many moderates. You can literally burn their system down in front of them and all they'll do is file a formal complaint with some bureaucratic department.
Even physically destroyed, and both hopeful potentials and dire consolidations have occurred. Whilst Bangladeshi and Nepalese youth have led the charge in instituting new regimes, the protests that toppled Madagascar's government were quickly co-opted by the military, who are now running the show.
My strongly worded letter.
Paving stones the beach was a utopian slogan uttered in the Paris uprisings of 1968, suggesting that the sometimes literal demolition of structures linked with oppression would intrinsically lead to a liberatory outcome.
Sure.
As we can see, this is not the case. The apolitical
wait.
of 1960 stones
that sounded good to me.
Military, who are now
What's
running
wrong
the show. The phrase under the...
Oh, I see. Okay, I think I understand. Just destroying the old system is not enough. You have to put something new in its place with the example, because sometimes when you destroy it, all you do is leave a power... In fact, often, what you do is you leave a power vacuum that is maybe taken over by a military coup.
Madagascar's government were quickly co-opted by the military, who are now running the show. The phrase, under the paving stones the beach, was a utopian slogan uttered in the Paris uprisings of 1968, suggesting that the sometimes literal demolition of structures linked with oppression would intrinsically lead to a liberatory outcome. As we can...
which is why modern leftists probably shouldn't play revolutionary just yet, even though it's fun. Yeah, I mean, it is the goal, right? It is the goal. But again, it's not about you shouldn't play revolutionary. It's you shouldn't think that what a revolution is just shooting a bunch of rich people in the head, right? Modern leftists should understand what a revolution actually is and what it means for it to be successful and productive. Right? Revolution is not just killing a bunch of rich people. It probably is going to involve that. It's gonna involve a bunch of that, if I have to imagine. But that's the start. Something needs to come after. And that something is the complicated part. That's the part where it actually requires all the fucking academia and education and learning and discussion and shit like that to understand what a system could look like that isn't this one, right? It's actually kind of, once you get enough people together, burning everything down is sort of the easy part, right? Like, that's actually the hard part, is getting everyone together, and then what comes next. Those two parts are incredibly difficult, right? It's a bottom-up model. Yeah. I got to see how Castro was moving, starting with 12 guys and then governing for the rest of his life, you know? But that's kind of the hard part. Like, the hard parts are getting everyone together, you know, getting the grassroots movement going. That's really hard. And then figuring out what to do after. That's really hard. But assuming you could do step 1, step 2 should be really easy. And then step 3 is hard again. That's right, Faf. That's right.
See, this is not the case. The apolitical fight against corruption and easily transmittable pop culture aesthetics of the Luffy flag have also allowed the mantle of this movement to be harnessed by more nefarious forces. In Mexico, for example, so-called Gen Z protests against the ludicrously popular soft socialist president of the country have been...
Yeah. That's 70%. Imagine telling Magneto I was just following orders. I think that's a great way to get turned into a ball of iron.
Attended in large part by managerial class adults, as well as being greatly supported and promoted by literal billionaires. Of course, I hope that those genuinely revolutionary movements resolve closer to Tahir than Tamarod, and that the bravery of these students inspires the global working class. Although our success in the Imperial Corps has been deeply limited. Returning to the Abolish the Police and BLM uprisings that exploded across America and the rest of the world in 2020, the protests and riots which have had the largest...
Although soft socialism is so popular when people get exposed to it, it's almost like it makes even the like diet version of this system is a significant improvement over capitalism. Who would have thought? The far-right always wants you to think they're the silent majority to the point where they never shut the hell up about it. Yep, and if they keep moving like that and we keep being silent about it, they will be right eventually.
Lasting impact are those in which the infrastructure of police power was seized and unmade, with Minneapolis being one of the few cities in the US which have seen an actual decrease in police presence, the building of alternatives to carceral responses, and, wouldn't you know it, also leading to a decrease in crime.
Whoa! Wow! You're telling me the police aren't helpful for lowering crime? And that community grassroots movements, and you're telling me that sending a guy with a fucking machine gun to a domestic disturbance at 2 a.m. is not productive? Now you're a fucking communist. Now you're talking crazy.
It's still a very...
Oh, now you're talking wild. I need a better word. Wild does not fit everywhere, but, you know, I can do the tiny amount of effort it takes to find a better word. Like, when someone says something incredibly insensitive and wrong to a friend, and they just say, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking when they're really not. Yep. Are the fucking police doing the crimes? Sometimes, yeah. Bonkers is good too. Ooh, thank you, Faf. That is, yeah, that's a nice one. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, yes. Often, yes, in fact. But also, even when they're not, they're certainly not helping stop the crimes. I like ludicrous in the vocab mix. Ooh. Ludicrous, bonkers, and wild. That's pretty good. Wicked. Ooh, I like that too.
Burning down that...
Thank you. This is all good.
Pigpen was, at the time, a more popular...
I don't think I hear ludicrous enough. He really fell off in the early 2000s.
...act than either of the candidates for president that year. Burning police precinct for mayor, I say. In failing to organise for power, a movement may succeed in changing policy or even toppling a regime, but there is no such thing as a political vacuum. As Mark...
Yes. This is the difference between, what was the difference? Political and social revolutions, right? Police aren't supposed to help stop crime in America, at least. They're supposed to protect private property. They have similar origins all over the world generally, right? But yeah, certainly it is very blatant in America. But I think there was someone who like got the shit beaten out of them by like they sued the police at one point for just watching while they got assaulted, basically. And it was like, well, there is nothing that says the police have to protect and serve, so you can't really sue them for that. They didn't really do anything wrong.
Assessed, though,
it's not American. Wicked in my head instantly activates Wicked Smart.
Who's incapable of asserting their class interest in their own name, whether through a parliament or a convention, they cannot represent themselves. They must be represented. Something will arrive in the place of a defeated power, and a people's ability to control their destiny in that moment depends on their ability to defend their own liberation, be it through traditional halls of power or radical alternatives. And those radical alternatives will only exist if they are agitated for. In What Is to Be Done, Lenin talks about spontaneous uprisings and assesses that such movements without class consciousness or direction will fall in line with the dominant ideology of the day.
Right.
We can see this in the results of many colour revolutions after the collapse of the USSR, which, where successful, ended up installing replications of Western bourgeois democracies, usually alongside mass privatisation in favour of Western capital. This is
Again, it's the deposing the current problem is not the end,
It's
basically.
not to say that those revolting were wrong to do so, as
No.
the Soviet system shook with 11th hour crises, or that their distrust of socialist or communist tendencies aren't too legitimised by missteps or injustices committed by governments in their nation's past, but in the absence of any alternative ideology, any counter-hegemony during this period of capitalist realism, all that strife and sometimes death resulted in the same dysfunctional system most of us are disillusioned by today.
Yes.
But organising
The phrase "which kind of wickedness is this" has hit my vernacular like air fryer crack. Interesting. Oh, hello, Mom Donnie.
for power is daunting, difficult, and runs into the unfortunate question of what is to be done with power once you've won it. A problem that, supposedly, modern advocates for revolutionary politics are allergic to.
The communists attack the Socialist Party as if they wish to shatter the union of the left. They give credence to the idea that these resistances would come from a more radical political need. In fact, it is because they no longer want power.
Interesting. The Union of the Left is an electoral alliance of the French Socialist, Communist, and Radical Movement of the Left. Centrists. The Socialist Party, supported by the Union, but heavily criticized by the Communists, won both the French legislative and presidential elections that year, but key economic proposals were backtracked on in the following years in favor of austerity programs. 1981 marked the beginning of a terminal decline for the French Communist Party's electoral results. Yeah, I mean, fuck, man. We can't. We got socialists in power, and they're still fucking doing austerity. Figuring out how to make a society without the systems we already know is a problem we still haven't solved. I mean, at the very least, some pretty strong ideas have been put forth. But yes, that is the hard part. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing should be done about the current one, right? Because even a bad implementation of existing ideas for better replacements would be better than what we have now. It just means that there's still lots of work to do on that front, certainly. Uh-oh.
There's a really annoying trend among liberal analysis of radical politics that accuses its practitioners of not actually wanting power. Whilst this isn't strictly untrue when considering some proponents of anarchism, rarely is the discussion that nuanced. The claim usually focuses on a supposedly unwinnable demand and compares it disfavourably to the election results of soft left or centrist parties which reject the platform. It's also used to sidestep self-criticism and lash out at this purportedly insignificant left for acting as a spoiler to the lesser of two evils. I saw an unending torrent of ghoul posting before I got off of Twitter because I was tired of groypers paying $7 a month to stream AI-generated clan tunes onto my feed.
My God.
Oh, that one was the White House.
Yes,
How
I do remember
terrible.
this one.
Journal
It got worse, by the way. Since it left Twitter, it got worse. How do we make communism but better, basically? Hard to say. This is where I check out of the conversation because I'm simply too uneducated on what communism, what the current ideas of communism even are, and what the successes and failures of previous attempts at even remotely communist regimes were. So I don't know.
Journalists and liberatory commentators
that is the question,
showcasing
isn't it?
atrocities committed against the Palestinian people by Israel, chiefly facilitated, of course, by the US,
Of course.
was spammed with lines like, well, you should have voted for Kamala, or hope you're glad you helped Trump win. The fundamentals are clear. Demanding the government try harder, well, try at all, to end a genocide is a niche, unrealistic single issue, and the existence of that demand in the discourse will torpedo the victory of the lesser evil. Of course, the realism of a demand isn't an objective thing. That there is an imperative to do something to stop this unfolding genocide, that there's nothing an individual can do to stop it, that our governments are key cogs in the war machine,
Right.
that it's not a genocide at all, but just a messy war against terrorism, is all simultaneously true, even if some standpoints are grounded in more objective facts. We are in a logic of simulation, Jean Baudrillard writes.
Oh, wow. Is this Reality Fractures viral marketing? I don't know what any of those 4 words mean together. I'm not going to lie to you, unfortunately. You'll have to elaborate.
Which no longer has anything to do with a logic of facts and an order of reason.
Plus 2
Simulation
YouTube
is
channel?
characterized
I don't
by a
know. I don't know what that
procession
means,
of
I
the
fear.
model, of all the models based on the merest fact.
What is this? We are in a logic of simulation which no longer has anything to do with the logic of facts and an order of reason. Simulation is characterized by a procession of the model, of all the models, based on the merest fact. The models comes first, their circulation, orbital like that of the bomb, constitutes the genuine magnetic field of the event. What the fuck are you? This shit doesn't make sense. Reality Fracture is the upcoming Magic the Gathering set. Oh, I see. I'm starting to think this has nothing to do with Magic the Gathering. When was the last time that it mentioned Magic? It was... Oh, we'll get there. Hold. Ah, there you go. About an hour and 30 minutes ago? About an hour and 30 minutes ago. Basically, from my knowledge, older communist societies were never actually communist. Yeah, maybe, but my knowledge is too limited to agree or disagree with that. I don't know. I just got here. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. Magic the Gathering is half of the words in this title, but, you know, maybe we'll get back to it at the end.
The models
What the
come
fuck does
first.
this mean,
Their
by the way? What does this
circulation
paragraph mean?
orbital, like
This
that
is-
of the bomb, constitutes the genuine magnetic
Indigenous American
field
tribes did a
of the
lot of
event.
communist practices?
The
Interesting.
call, for example, for Biden to drop out of the 2024 presidential race because he was a dying old fool was rejected as an unrealistic, radical demand by establishment Democrats and those who didn't want to rock the boat. There were uncountable facts.
For what little, again, and when I say little, I mean really little that I know of. I feel like I walked into my weird uncle's room when I was 8. You know, sometimes your weird uncle was onto something. From what little I know of, I have heard like basically I want to read about Burkina Faso, okay? Because I have heard a lot of like black revolutionaries say that one of the problems with Marx's system is that it is not very intersectional, basically, right? Like he, you know, again, this is me entirely parroting things I've heard. I don't necessarily understand any of this enough to support or not support it, but I have basically heard the idea that the issue is that Marx is mostly concerned with the white male European factory worker. And on that front, he's kind of got it in one, right? He's kind of got it in one on that front, but the problem is that he, you know, again, you can't really just dismantle one part of the system and expect things to go well from there, right? My bozo detector is going crazy. Might need a little bit of calibration there, but you do you.
given as to why that could never happen.
You.
Rules, conventions, common sense were all cited. However, the moment establishment common sense shifted to a new model, those facts no longer mattered.
No change is too
and
radical in the
new
current
facts
system.
were
It's fucked
upheld
up. I mean,
to
this ain't
support a
working.
Change in leadership.
Something's
The
gotta
reason I'm
change.
delving into this is to
Though
demonstrate how common
putting some
sense
thought
is
into
a
what the fuck that
fabrication.
change should
That
be is
radical
certainly
demands
not
are
wasted
only
effort.
unrealistic because people with established political or economic power say they're not. The facts support.
My break's over. Good luck with whatever's going on here, cuz. Don't worry about it. I can't tell if you are confused or conservative, but they are kind of the same thing. Regardless, have fun. I hope you had. I
Supporting,
hope this
for
was
example,
weird enough
free
for you.
universal healthcare in the States, when
I
lined
don't
up
think
with
I will
the
be seeing
facts
you
against
again,
it,
probably,
may
just based on the
prove
vibe you've been
favourable.
giving, but, you know,
But the
have fun.
model used in mainstream discourse begins with the conclusion that such a system couldn't work, usually because the model advocates with the largest platforms have an ideological or financial interest in retaining a for-profit system, and thus that is what becomes real.
Sure.
How do you pay for it is always asked of free cancer treatment for the poor, and not when the budget of the secret police dwarfs most national militaries, not because funding
might depends
is
if YouTube
easier or
recommends you when
harder
I'm
to
on my
source,
other break. Well,
but because that is the simulated
perhaps
model.
see you later.
That's what's been defined as common sense. That's capitalist realism. But how do we change the narrative and remake the real?
That's a fucking crazy graph, by the way,
Well,
that ICE funding.
It's us.
Holy shit, Magic the Gathering, it's back. It's been an hour and 30 minutes exactly, but it's back. We're here again.
Popular grassroots movements, organized people demanding change or even seizing power to enact it, is the way reality is rewritten. Slavery was challenged first by enslaved people reacting to their reality and disrupting it, advocating
Monument
for their
to
own
endurance, my
humanity,
goat.
whilst also making the structure which dehumanized them economically unworkable. The same happened with apartheid in South Africa, and has been and is happening with apartheid in Israel. The suffragettes, the Black Panthers, Just Stop Oil, all used a diversity of tactics to demand social changes or demonstrate the efficacy and needfulness of them, and even without seizing mass power themselves, managed to adapt the hegemony to include some parts of their platform. The suffragettes' demand for equal voting rights was won as a result of their action. The BPP's free breakfast programs, the first nationally organised ones of their kind
that's what we were
in
just
the
talking
US,
about, right?
became a staple of many states, even if stripped of their politically educational factor, and Just Stop Oil dissolved their organisation in April of 2025 after 3 years of disruption and campaigning, when the UK government agreed to its central demand, an end to new oil and gas licenses. Reality can be altered.
My idea is maybe don't have like 12 people have almost all the power and control over the whole country. Yeah, have one person and have it be me. I promise I will do a great job.
In both
Probably.
seizing power and forcing power
Probably.
to adapt. The right understands this.
Let's give it all
Brexit
to
exists
Dimitri
not because Nigel Farage won an election
from
and pushed
Three
it
Houses.
through, but because his nationalist movement put the fear of God in the actual prime minister of the country
All right,
at the
let's
time,
go.
who enacted his policy for
I'm ready.
him. UKIP never won majority popular support in any national election they stood candidates in, but when
Or what, you didn't watch Cora Lame? This is what we're making our decisions on. Not the fact that I am terribly unqualified and uneducated, but the fact that I have not watched I've watched some of, by the way, but I've not watched all of The Legend of Korra. This is where you draw the line in the sand?
now living in an epoch pretty much designed by them, and I've
Whatever,
never
man.
seen
Classic woke DEI shenaniganry.
Andrew
So much for the tolerant left, I guess. If you don't watch Korra, they just shoot you in the head.
stars of the world chastising the realism of their electoral platform. However, how the nebulous left seeks to wield power makes supporters far more critical of it than their opponents. Leftists, useless as that term tends to be, seek to either abolish capitalism or improve it so that it
I gotta read about this Burkina Faso individual. Well, not individual, country. I personify things often. And this Thomas Sankara individual, because it sure seems very interesting.
no longer resembles
I keep seeing it popping up everywhere. If you can't do your required reading, you're most certainly not educated enough to hold that seat of power. Oh no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I actually am, but Burkina Faso got castles?
capitalism. But in winning national power or even seizing space in any given locality,
Let's put a video on
an
required reading about
organisation
Just Stop
must
Oil.
contend with
Ooh.
the messy reality of having to exist tangled in a national, indeed global capitalist system. My union Acorn has come into conflict with councillors from parties you'd
Acorn?
expect,
It's a
like
very
the
cute
Tories
name
and
for-
Labour, but also the Greens, as a dearth of local funding leads to yet more tough decisions, which always primarily impact the poor and never the wealthy.
Tough decisions.
Criticising progressives in positions of power is balked at by their supporters, who see it as a gateway to reactionary snapping up disillusioned votes. But for as long as these parties are unable to break through or see past privatisation,
What about we spread the
as a
power and influence
solution to
across everybody and have the
problems
whole
caused by
community decide
privatisation,
things?
Disillusion
Some kind of communism?
will abound anyway.
Again, I can't. All I can do about this is make jokes because I do not deign to have anywhere near the required level of education to actually have this discussion. The goal is to eventually be able to, but right now,
The
all I can
constant
do is really
advice
just
from
fuck
people who
about
are
it.
adverse to liberation, that one must abandon hopes of ending the war in favor of winning this year's battle.
What is going on here? Much of the online left spent all of 2024 mindlessly focused on Palestine and the complicity of Democratic politicians sending aid to Israel. This campaign has had the following effects. 0 Palestinian lives were saved, not one fewer bomb or bullet was fired by the IDF. It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the U.S. will put no diplomatic... It may have slightly contributed to the re-election of Trump, guaranteeing that the U.S. will put no diplomatic pressure on Netanyahu for at least 4 years, making protests against Israel both much riskier and less effective. Trump is also incidentally a menace to me and basically everyone I care about. A perfectly enlightened being would feel no bitterness about this, but I do. None of this is the fault of Palestinians, of course. We're overwhelmingly the victims here. I hope that someday American policy will shift in their favor. We'll continue to support that cause. All right, if you were more conservative up to 2 years ago, you completely missed ContraPoints. I only vaguely know of this person's existence in general. So this looks like this is just this is Democrats getting mad at people for being mad at the Democrats for supporting a genocide. Is that right? ContraPoints. Oh God, fucking ContraPoints. You know, I can help with the education. I consider myself pretty educated relatively. Maybe. I mean, if you've read all of the communist theory and shit like that, I certainly will. I'll take it. But when I say educated, yeah, I don't necessarily mean in the sense of like, I got like a bachelor's degree. I mean more so in the sense that I just haven't. I just don't know. I just don't know. I don't understand these systems well enough from the point that I haven't I haven't read what the experts have said about them and come to my own conclusions about it, right? The manifesto is free online. Let's do it. It's a great place to start, probably. Though again, I think I am more interested in again, some of these African nations' conceptions of communism. The Sparks note says she was pretty good and influential with the whole left video essay and now has tea with Hillary Clinton. Ah, I see. I see.
Only displays the pitifully shallow sports fan approach to politics pervasive throughout Europe and North America. Even in the best case scenario of organised power achieving actual abolition, the hangover of abolished structures has, historically, still produced conflict that power is required to untangle. Be it in how necessary but limited reforms are poisoned by persisting injustice, seen in the continued existence of systemic anti-black racism in post-civil rights and certainly...
ContraPoints has some pretty good videos. The further back you go, but the more recent, the more fence-sitting liberal she is. I see.
Post-Civil War America, or in how centuries of pre-revolutionary hegemony has long-lasting social legacies that may take many generations to undo, seen in how the patriarchal structures engendered by the ascension of private property still contributes to discrimination against and inequities for women in many social experiments and movements. Abolishing all discriminatory laws surrounding drug addiction, for example, treating it as a healthcare issue and not a criminal one, as Alex Vitale's End of Policing advocates, is the correct approach, as has been brought...
These books are all in the description, right? Because there have been a lot of very interesting bibliography, I presume? Yes, okay. God damn. Yeah, okay. That is good. That is good.
Borne out by a great many experiments throughout the world. But even if such a program centered on decriminalization, harm reduction such as through needle exchanges, and coupled with equitable economic
there have been a lot of very
out the
interesting
material
suggestions in this
inception of
video
addiction
where I just go,
enacted
I
on a
want to
mass
read that at some
scale,
point, but
it
it's
still
a
takes
4-hour
time to
video
be
and it's
rolled
impossible
out,
to remember
let
all
alone
of them.
seen to completion. In that period, old techniques may be relied on to plug gaps in the changing model, as flawed and counterproductive as those short-term solutions may be.
Transitions are a thing.
Call them that. The trick really is to identify when a harm with power is coming.
It's probably obvious, but for African communism stuff, Sankara. Oh, is it Sankara? I thought it was Sankara. Sankara is the best starting point. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so I've heard. Again, yeah, not far be it from me to discredit anything that Marx was saying. Again, I'm not going to claim to have a strong opinion one way or the other. It is just I have basically come to figure out that if black revolutionaries are saying some shit, they are, they're usually early to the party. You know what I mean? Like they are kind of the people that I am more inclined to listen to. And if some of them are saying that Marx had some good ideas, but his shit was a little flawed because it wasn't really concerned with like race or patriarchy or anything like that, then at least it calls my ear to attention, I suppose. Right.
As a result of some unfortunate shortfall in the
that and the entire history of Haiti are for sure required reading. Interesting.
development of an emancipatory
You got any good books on that, on either of those or both
of
of those, I will absolutely take them, Demi. I'm very interested in that.
Because said
Honestly, I'm interested enough in Burkina Faso that might be next. That might be next after Cuba. It keeps popping up. It's everywhere. Genuinely, like after we're done with we're done with like the history of economic sanctions in terms of like what the presidents did. Next, we're going to take a look at like more so of an internal look from like the Cuban side and like what the Cubans and Castro and everyone was doing internally over that course of time. And then we're kind of going to be done with Cuba. After that, I mean, Burkina Faso has been incredibly interesting. So personally, I think Marx is a product of his time and the best example of how communism is an epoch-dependent process refined by previous revolutions and societal tools of combating it. Sure. Yeah.
Emancipation is just being kicked down the road, or where those in power have no plan to move beyond present social or economic conditions.
Yup.
Again, Rodney's book on the Russian Revolution is an archetypal example of this lucid
This Walter Rodney individual feels also very important to listen to.
criticism and defense. You'll never get a better, detailed critique of revolutionary means and ends, ones with liberation and not peace in mind first and foremost, from anyone other than revolutionaries themselves. Divining what abuses of power are unfortunate shortfalls in a developing system and what are simply old ways grafted into the foundations of something sold as liberation can be tricky, especially if it's policy you're living through and where those in power, especially those of the lesser evil persuasion, will try and convince you it's the former all of the time, even when it's not. Lesser evilism is its own limpet on critique of power.
Right.
The idea being that if your ideal standpoint isn't able to take power itself, you should support the less bad of the remaining options. The issue here, of course, is that what a lesser evil is defined almost in whole by proponents of those self-described evils.
Right.
No one was calling Zoran Mamdani a lesser evil in comparison to Andrew Cuomo, despite the fact that the new mayor-elect of New York is objectively a moderate social democratic option in the grand scheme of demands.
This person cutting between different takes of the script giving me whiplash because their tone changes dramatically.
And the other guy's a disgraced demonic sex pest. But, as we can see with establishment Democrats still refusing to endorse Mamdani even when he was their party's candidate, lesser evilism isn't pragmatic politics. It's propaganda deployed to get you to vote in line with established liberalism. To be retracted whenever the people who have gotten their way in politics all their career suddenly have to contend with party unity, including a rising
Don't lick your lips like that. Fucking
working
makes me
class
feel
movement.
dry.
The liberal axiom that slow, incremental progress within their system is the only way to fix anything is not only indoctrinated in and as the admonishment and rewriting of social movements as we discussed in our section on violence, but it is also just a terrible game plan. We as a planet don't actually have time for things to get marginally better in the next 20 to 40 years. As Malm's How to Blow Up a Pipeline more than astutely lays out.
Excuse me?
Winning elections against a heinous force
a great
doesn't mean anything if you then fail to deconstruct the basis for that force's existence, as the sensible, level-headed, reform-like Labour under Starmer is currently experiencing. Lenin wrote perfectly on the folly of approaching elections based on these grounds.
System is broken and must be fixed versus system is working as intended and needs to be destroyed. Yep.
When challenging a proposal to drop members of the Russian Social Democratic Party out of elections in support of the more electable traditional liberals, in order to deny seats to reactionary parties. We would undermine the principles and the general revolutionary significance of our campaign.
Also, I don't mean to sound condescending, but I also really recommend to connect IRL with some leftist local groups because it's all really important to keep a practical perspective on all the theory. Oh yeah, it's not condescending at all. All of this fucking reading and education is worthless if it stays in my bedroom, right?
For the sake
It's
of
not
gaining a
condescending
seat
at all.
in the Duma for a liberal, we would be subordinating class policy to parliamentarism.
Do not mistake reading for praxis.
Instead of subordinating parliamentarism to class policy. We would deprive ourselves of the opportunity to gain an estimate of our forces. We would lose what is lasting and durable in all elections, the development of the class consciousness and solidarity of the socialist proletariat. We would gain what is transient, relative, and untrue. Marx and Engels raised this same point many years prior, calling for proletarians to enter elections as candidates and writing that even though there is no prospect whatsoever of their being elected, they must not allow themselves to be bribed by such arguments of the Democrats, that by doing so they are splitting the Democratic Party and giving the reactionaries the possibility of victory.
Damn, that old, huh? They're talking about this shit in this is literally the shit that, as far as I can gather, ContraPoints was mad about with Kamala and Trump, and they're talking about it in 1850. What do you know? Doesn't require perfect encyclopedic knowledge or really nice most of the time. Oh, yeah, don't worry, I don't think it does. Wait, so how do we vote if we criticize voting for the person whose policies contribute to less harm than the other? I mean, this is why they're saying, you know, there has to be an actual progressive option in the vote, right? Because I mean, if there isn't, I don't think anyone would necessarily, like, if literally your only two options are Kamala and Trump, then I guess nobody will probably blame you for holding your nose and voting Kamala, right? But the idea is that you know, that should not be something that you consider as like progress. Like, that is at best something you were forced into doing.
Ultimate purpose of all such phrases is to dupe the proletariat. The advantage which the proletarian party is bound to make by such independent action is infinitely more important than the advantage.
I mean, I think this person is blaming us for voting Harris. Maybe. I could see the idea of not supporting either sides of these of this system, right? I don't personally I don't see an issue with voting as harm reduction. Personally, I feel like the idea of, since you usually, like, you know, voting at the end of the day is not, especially not right in the short term, voting is not what is going to actually change anything for the better, but it can function as harm reduction. So I personally don't mind that. I'm not sure if that is the I'm not sure if the point of this video is that voting for Kamala was wrong. Maybe. I'm concerned that despite saying otherwise elsewhere here, some of the message here could be interpreted by people as, who cares, there's a lesser evil. If it's not actually good, don't bother voting, by too many people. I have sort of interpreted this as the idea that, again, this lesser evil idea is not actually meant, people telling you to vote for the lesser evil are not actually intending to, like, it's not about the pragmatism of holding back the revolutionaries. It is just people wanting you to give them power, right? Basically, is what I've interpreted this as. Don't view this as any kind of actual progress or accomplishment. You haven't actually, like, done much, maybe some basic harm reduction, right? In reality, no, not voting is complacency more than advocating for a third option. That's what I'm saying, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying, that's why the very next step here is advocating for progressives to run in elections, right? Because at that point, voting for a progressive is an actual third option. Yes? Even if the odds that they are going to actually win the election are basically zero, especially the first time they show up, right? But yeah, I think if literally you only have two options and you vote for the one that is harm reduction, I don't think necessarily the point here is that you should have not voted. I see it as a better option right now, but it's not a step into a better future. That's how I've interpreted it anyway. But it's possible that the take is more aggressive than that. Right? That's what Spice probably going for. Step one, vote for lesser evil. Step two, keep pushing for better. Right? Because the points that it has made is like, winning an election doesn't do anything if you then don't do anything to stop 4 years from now being faced with the exact same problem again. And we didn't even win an election. Like, it's not like we got a progressive candidate in office. We literally just got the slightly less shitty of two options in office. So, like, this didn't do anything at all. There has to be other shit you do for, including, at the very least, running a third option of some kind, and more importantly, probably, you know, extra democratic means. Weirdly, I mean, one of the things you can do, right? Mutual aid and community. Fascists and the far right thrive. They need to be able to look at people and tell them, right, that your life has gotten significantly worse over the past 4 years, hasn't it? Isn't everything awful and garbage and shitty? You should give me all of the power and I promise to fix it. Notably, even through like local organization and community aid, you can make the answer to that initial question, which is the underpinning of all of the fucking ideological vomiting that they do afterwards. No. Right? Regardless of any actual political policies, any actual attempts by the government, if communities help each other out and cover for each other, then people's quality of life, it buys a little bit of time in the declining, everyone's quality of life is getting worse, which is how liberalism inevitably gives way to fascism, right? So it's something. But yeah, again, the way that I would interpret this personally, again, is not that complacency is the better option. It is that voting is still complacency, really. Like, voting for Kamala, you didn't, like, don't vote for Kamala and go, I voted for the lesser evil. Anyway, back to Honkai Star Rail, right? That's how I interpret it, anyway.
Advantage that might be incurred by the presence of a few reactionaries in the representative body.
Of course, there needs to exist a genuine working class movement.
Back to
vote
ZZZ,
for,
yeah.
or a radically different form of power.
This is, see, again, right immediately after we unpause, there needs to be another option. This is what it's saying, right? Like, if there isn't a better option, like literally if there is not a radical workers movement or something, a Zoran Mamdani, right? Because Mamdani is a great example. Mamdani is not radical by any means, right? But Mamdani is a great example of the kind of person, if you were really into this lesser evil idea, right, you wouldn't vote for Mamdani. Because you'd be like, well, how could he ever win? Right? Like, he's so different. You would never, like, the people who initially support him and start making him seem like, are these persons' pronouns it, or using it to refer to the video? I've been told that they are its, yes. They're non-binary, and to my understanding, their pronouns are actually, yes, its, which is, I find a little entertaining, and I think they do as well, but I'm obviously going to respect it regardless. It's just non-standard for me to refer to a human as it, but, you know, maybe it's a good thing to break down. But anyway, the point, I think, like, even right here, they just mentioned there needs to be a third option, right? If there isn't a third option, then, I mean, I assume that none of everything that's just been described here counts, right? And again, the point of, you know, even Zoran Mamdani is by and large still harm reduction. Like, it's not like Zoran is going to, you know, fix the system from the ground up or anything like that. But if you were too into lesser evilism, I don't know. I mean, do you even vote for, is Cuomo even the lesser evil at this point? Maybe. Hard to say. But, like, between, I don't know, like, you probably vote for, like, Sliwa or something, because you might think that the fucking Republican is genuinely a lesser evil than the fucking Democrat in this case, but you wouldn't have voted for Zoran. And the initial people that supported Zoran and made his movement feel like it was big enough that maybe it could actually win would never have done that either, right? When there is a third option, when there is a third party, don't vote for the lesser evil. Because if you always just vote for the lesser evil because of the fact that you think that the radical option, even if it exists, never has a chance, or not even, you know, the relatively radical option, even if it exists, doesn't have a chance to win, and I need to be pragmatic with my policies to avoid the reactionaries winning, then at this point, you are now contributing to supporting the status quo, right? Like, if your options are, again, think about it this way. If your options, this is obviously an impossible example, but just to make it clear, if your options are, you know what? If your options are, at some point, say it was like Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, or like Abdurrahman Sayed, right? The guy from Minnesota? Where is he? Where is he running? I forget. Minnesota, I think. Who, by the way, is an American citizen and therefore could run for president, right? Again, he's not a radical by any means, but he is like more of that kind of Zoran style of politician. If you go, well, I'm just going to vote for the lesser evil because I don't want Trump to win, this is where I think this video will be criticizing that behavior, right? And we can have a discussion on that. I think there's a discussion on that. But I think that's where this behavior is being criticized, right? If you literally don't have a third option and you hold your nose and vote for Kamala because at least she's not Trump, I can't imagine that too many people are going to be like, genuinely upset with you on that. Some people will be, but I don't think that is going to be universally considered like, oh, you're a shit person, oh my god, fuck you, right? Because the lesser evilism, when there is a third option, just an option that is like, you know, just an option that is like unlikely to win unless supported en masse, that's when the lesser evilism is just propaganda, and by voting for the lesser evil instead of the actual progressive option, you are now contributing to supporting the status quo, right? A great example for this is Canadian politics, right? Canadian politics, where we do have multiple parties, and there actually is a third party that is a little more progressive, a lot more progressive, that exists and like theoretically could win, or at the very least force the liberals into a minority coalition where they can bully them into a lot of progressive change to make liberals get what they want and not get overtaken by the conservatives, right? And that is the NDP. In a situation like Canada, if you vote for, you know, Mark Carney because unfortunately the Carney election was a little different in the fact that the NDP party literally collapsed mid-election. The leader of the party resigned and they essentially weren't running anymore. But you know, if the NDP had an actual leader, which they do right now, and you vote for Mark Carney over whoever the conservative is in power because he's the lesser evil and you don't think the NDP can win, even though you have a somewhat progressive option available, but you just choose to be pragmatic in your politics, that is where I believe this video is criticizing you. And that is where I could at least see a very good argument for that being a wrong move, right? Because this is where you are now just refusing to even do the simplest possible agitation for change, which is just casting a vote in a certain way. This isn't organizing as a community. This isn't protesting. This isn't mutual aid or free breakfast programs. It's just casting a vote, and you can't even be bothered to agitate for change and take a risk in that sense. That's where I would say that criticism probably is at least valid, or at least I can understand where it's coming from, right? Does that make sense? That's my interpretation anyway. I will say, if this video is saying if you have literally two options and your options are Kamala and Trump and you should just not vote because Kamala is also bad, then I think I disagree with that. But that has not been the flavor that I have gotten from this. Again, after this whole quote about Marx about saying, oh, guys, you must run in for parliament, right? It's true. It is the opening your eyes of analogizing it to a morning routine. Yes, like just voting for the more progressive candidate, even if they are unlikely to win, is like the bare minimum, right? So like they were talking about all this Kamala stuff, but then also, you know, the quote here by Marx is saying that progressives and revolutionaries and proletarians have to run in elections. So clearly it's saying that, you know, the importance of having an option is there, and then it says it directly too, right? Right here.
Representative body.
Of course, there needs to exist a genuine working class movement to vote for,
right,
or a radically different form of power to foster in order for these perspectives to be of use. If such a thing does not yet exist, then one needs to be built.
Right. And until it's built, I don't think anyone can blame. Like, on the day of the election, there's no time to build that thing. If that thing is not built yet, hold your nose and vote for Kamala. The point, I think, is don't spend the next 4 years playing Honkai Star Rail. Right? Don't spend the next 4 years playing Honkai Star Rail. Spend the next 4 years using women's first names and men's last names. Misogyny seeps into the simplest things. Yeah, I agree. That makes sense. Did I? I didn't call her Harris. I guess because Kamala versus Trump, right? That is true. That's fair. Yeah. It just feels so weird to call him Donald. It's like almost, you're right, in that there's certainly something there. You're right. But also, it feels too friendly to call him Donald. You know what I mean? But you're right. Yeah, I've said Trump and Kamala, aren't I? But yeah, point being, right? You know, once you hold your nose and vote for Kamala or Harris, Biden, yeah, we don't call him Joe, right? Once you hold your nose and vote for Harris, Do not then spend the next 4 years doing nothing so that the next time you are in the same situation again and go, oh no, what could have been done about this, right? Obviously, 4 years might not be enough, but over every one of these 4-year cycles, we should be working as communities to make it so every single time the prospect of some kind of third progressive option existing and eventually maybe even winning gets more and more and more likely, instead of just doing the only sort of activism that you ever do being voting, right? That, to me, is the point of this, and I think it is literally stated that directly now, right? Then one needs to be built. If it doesn't exist yet, one needs to be built. It's very true we did all collectively hit up the Minecraft servers during Biden's presidency, right? I think of Donald, I think of the duck, and not the dictator. Yeah. But it's true, I don't call her Harris. I probably should call her Harris, right? I should call all of them, because yeah, again, it's kind of, I never think about it at all, but when you point it out, it's like, yeah, why do I say Trump but Kamala? In the most clear example, don't call him Barack either. Yeah. In the most clear example, do you know what I refer to Bill Clinton as? Clinton. Do you know what I refer to Hillary Clinton as? Hillary. That is really interesting. I have never noticed this before. They literally have the same name. One of them is Clinton, and one of them is Hillary. Isn't that odd? That's a damn good point, Faf. It's a damn good point.
We're not going to get into a debate about...
Donald was the first president to shit himself in the Oval Office. Yeah, it seems to do the simplest things, man. It's scary. Again, I have so much unpacking to do, man. I don't know if I could ever not be a misogynist, but I'm certainly not there yet.
The efficacy of
entryism. I'm pretty far from Oklahoma. I'm pretty far from okay.
Trying to change a bourgeois party. Such a thing does not yet exist, then one needs to be built. I'm not going to get into a debate about the efficacy of entryism, trying to change a bourgeois party into a proletarian one from the inside, simply because this video is too long already.
Sure.
But suffice to say that in my experience of watching progressives entering halls of power, or even anti-capitalist rhetoric supplanting the leadership of an established party, without a total reworking of the political structures of those organs, the best you can hope for is positive but frustrated gains that will always be vulnerable to dismantling, and at worst, those voices will become corrupted or silenced.
I guess part of it might be that Trump, Obama, and Biden were president, and I imagine presidents are typically referred to by their last names, also as people got used to seeing their name. True, but do you know what we called them while they were campaigning and not yet president? Trump, Obama, and Biden. And do you know what we called Hillary while she was campaigning and not yet president? Hillary, right? Before they were president, they were still Obama, Trump, and Biden. Before she was president, and she still wasn't, she was never president, she was still Hillary. Whether or not they had won the presidency, the men were being referred to by their last names, and the woman was being referred to by her first name. Since you asked about any resources for learning about Sankara and Haiti, Thomas Sankara Speaks, the Burkina Faso Revolution 1983 to 87 is a good primary source from the man himself. And Professor Schuyler has a very concise, albeit long and tedious series on the history of Haiti on his YouTube channel. Very concise, albeit very long, is very interesting, but I guess it's a lot to cover, right? I was wondering about during the campaign part. Didn't remember how they referred to during the campaigns. Trump, Biden, and Obama, right? I can tell you that. People did not call him Joe. People like, you know what it was too? And this is to Fast's point as well. Do you know what times people would call Biden Joe, or what times they would call Trump Donald? It was when they were trying to belittle them or make fun of them or demean them. And yes, Sleepy Joe, the Donald, right? When people were trying to demean these people, that's when they refer to them as by their first name, because it is inherently a little bit more disrespectful, right? Like, when you're speaking to someone's parents, when you're a kid, you don't call their mother, Emily or whatever. You call her Mrs. Robinson, right? Because speaking to people through their last name is inherently seen in our society, at least, as more respectful. Right, being on a first name basis with someone implies some level of closeness, but also it's an informality, right? Emily Robinson, is that a name that I should know? I don't know why did my brain pull Emily Robinson out of the hat? Who is that? I know that is a name that is like exists. I know I pulled that from somewhere, but I don't know where I pulled it from, right? So again, when people called Biden Blast being an exception, I guess, yeah. But when people called Joe or Donald or Barack, they usually either did it in a joking manner. Like, again, it was lowering the seriousness of the conversation they were being talked about in, or they're using it to just straight up demean them, right? Whereas that's our default with the women. It's a very good point, Fef. It is so many things that feel so normal. You know, it's those things that just feel normal that you always have to question. The brainwashing runs deeper than you could ever imagine. Yo, what's going on, Quagsire? Did you watch the movie Virgin Territory featuring Emily Robinson? No, I did not. I don't know what that is. That name, I mean, maybe it's just like a relatively common like name for like a white lady or something. But I feel like I've seen something about that movie. I don't know. That movie title sounds completely unfamiliar to me, though. I will say.
Of course, the morale, inspiration, and momentum to
just
be
look for
found
the name,
in
some
such
white
films
lady
is its own boon and shouldn't be overlooked. But not to.
I mean, why? As a dude whose name is Adham Badawi, right? As a guy as an Arabic-speaking Middle Eastern man, why, when I had to come up with a name for a woman, did I come up with Emily Robinson? You know? And not like, Zainab Hussein or something like that. Zainab Hassan. Hussein is a first name. Zainab Hassan. Why did I say Emily Robinson? That's another thing. There is certainly there's some white supremacy seeping in there too, right? There's a lot of things that are just, you don't even think about them. They just happen instinctually. And it's all part of the unpacking, right? That's a good point. Very white name. Yeah, I'm not even a white guy. You know what I mean? But if you ask me, if I hadn't just said this sentence and you asked me to come up with 10 names, most of them will be men and all of them will be white, I think. He's not white. I mean, you could be forgiven, right? You could be forgiven. If I like straightened my hair and shaved my beard, I think I look exceedingly Greek is what I've gotten from most people. But believe it or not, no, I somehow I'm not.
Substitute aphorisms for analysis, it really do be true that if you don't change systems...
What was your name? Sounded hard to understand. Excuse me? It's just my name. It's just Arabic. It's got to be maybe difficult for you to say because you are not Arabic, right? But what do you mean sounded hard to understand? A nice left YouTube channel is Adam Something on Practical Left Stuff and Innuendo Studios alt-right playbook series. Adam Something on Practical Left Stuff and Innuendo Studios alt-right playbook series. Okay.
Systems will change you. It's also, if anything, more important to engage in the kind of direct work discussed in the previous section. A political party claiming the mantle of vanguard of the coming communist revolution, or an anarchist organ which demands a rejection and abolition of state power, which only seem to exit the woodwork during elections, who struggle to point to any material good their non-electoral strategies produce beyond awareness raising,
do shit
are not
outside of
revolutionary.
Elections. Yes.
A great thing to look for when joining an organization or when considering starting your own is to ask what it is they do to benefit the people now, beyond what they say they will be doing if they, for example...
With Practical Left Stuff, I mean infrastructure as in social access to trains and such. It's surprisingly interesting, or maybe I'm just really autistic. Alt-right playbook is good, a different direction than what you're doing now. Less history focus and more rhetoric focus. Both, of course, both intersect. Yeah, I mean... Rhetoric has been used throughout history, and it often leads to the creation of history when certain people take power and parties take power, and then history happens. So
win your vote.
Definitely good.
It took a bit of bouncing around different organizations for me to find one which seemed to understand the importance of simultaneous direct action and parliamentary pressure, but I did eventually find one in Acorn. It's a community union which pushes for change in local and
I need to
national
find one of these in my area. I'm sure it exists.
Showing up to resist bailiff overreach or landlord neglect. We've managed to shut down arms infrastructure supplying Israel in my city, kept low-income families on life-saving economic relief, and changed the national policies of banks, all by organizing across the range of communities that exist in our cities and mobilizing. In exercising your and your neighbours' political muscles, in showing that they have a collective influence when united that doesn't need to lie dormant between election cycles, is greater than just a revolutionary glimmer. It's power.
And that's the thing, too, yeah. creating your own organization is really hard. There probably, especially if you live in a major city, there probably are ones somewhat nearby that you can join up with, right?
When the time's darken,
do somethingism.
Will there be singing even then? There will be singing even then of how the times darken.
Interesting. Bertolt Brecht. Brecht wrote The Dark Times in exile from Nazi Germany. He would later flee the U.S. after being blacklisted by Hollywood and investigated by the House Un-American Activities Committee over alleged communist associations. What do you know? Bro fled Nazi Germany to a different Nazi Germany. He just didn't realize that at the time. Certainly the third place he fled was cool. He lived to see the destruction of Nazi Germany and died in his home in East Berlin in 1956. Okay. I mean, you know, we take those. That's a W.
This entire discussion has been largely theoretical and philosophical without concrete or explicit advocacy.
It has been very theoretical. Some of this academic jargon is, at least to me, exactly that. So, like, what was that shit about we live in a simulation where the models are the perpetuation of their very bones and the communists of the something? And so some of this shit has been incredibly dense. So it is, you know. Poetic Cow went after the door knock, the guy writing stuff vanished, and it started whispering.
It has to be. I don't know your situation, and I probably know vanishingly
The model's quote was insane.
little about your national conditions, say nothing for your local issues. Especially if you live in Laos. I feel really bad about singling out that country earlier. I do not know why I did that. I don't know your capacity for changing where you're at. But much as Miguel hopes that the world building of Drift will encourage people to delve into a people's history that's often left unsaid in our education systems, I hope this diatribe has encouraged you to look into how to change your corner of the world. Whilst I can't give direct advice, I do have a few final things.
Oh, right. Drift.
Oh, right. Pressured into
this was a magic video.
It's very easy to watch a film, read a book, hear a news story, and become incensed and energized to act. But none of the revolutionary texts that have shaped my perspective and understanding, from the anarchist Gelderloos to Black Panther founder Huey Newton to literally Lenin, advocate for random
literally Lenin.
Whilst individuals acting is the only way things are changed, and whilst people like Greta Thunberg energized a global climate movement through solo protest, you will burn yourself out if you throw yourself into every protest you can find, or overcommit to providing assistance to the nearest socialist action group.
This is what we saying, right? Fit your own oxygen mask before helping others. Don't just become this like angry, incensed person. Live your life. Play 3 houses. You know, it's important. Just the only thing you do should not be political activism. It's more so. It's a change from doing nothing, and I would he called do somethingism, but to doing something rather, right? If you are like any kind of anything is a good step, and just like this is hard shit. Just like anything, you know, if you go to the gym and the first thing you do when you first get there is fucking bench 315, you're going to kill yourself. You're going to die. You're going to drop that weight on your chest. It's going to break your ribs. It's going to take you through the bench, and your mother is going to outlive you, and it's going to be very sad. Okay. So it's the same thing. Like, don't just go, oh, well, now my entire life has turned into political activism. Baby steps, right? If everyone was doing a little bit of something, things would fucking like damn near be fixed already, right? It's you know, it's not about burning yourself from both ends to get like a good few months out of you before you just turn into a desiccated husk of a human being. But a lot of us do literally nothing. Go to the gym, take a walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes and leave. That's a great way to start. Do like the activism equivalent of that. You know, I mean, this is what I'm talking about when I say, like, start with, like, maybe, like, knocking on your neighbor's door. Completely apolitically. Just start with un-isolating yourself from your local community. Right? You don't have to talk about a single political thing. Knock on your neighbor's door and get them addicted to Commander. And then you will truly be a Nazi.
It's good to take time to assess what's best for you.
Self-care and not hating yourself is resistance already? Sure. Refusing to give up hope, right? It's a great step, right? Like, live, laugh, love, as the white ladies say, because it reminds you what you're fighting for. Don't do everything, but try to do something. Or at least try to work towards doing something. If you aren't in a position in your life where you can do something right now, have it as a goal. Be reasonable with it, though, right? Another aspect of fitting your oxygen mask first is that it makes you better at helping others. That's true. You losing oxygen makes it impossible for you to help the person struggling. That's right. That's right. This is going to be a long process. You know, you need to be able to do this long term. Reason to give up hope. Bro thinks he's David Cornsweat.
Immediate conditions.
Oh, I'm a punk rocker. Yes, I am.
There is probably a cause close to you, emotionally or geographically, that has an urgent need for people to work on it.
Do something and start local. Great point.
But you will always be of more use to it if you contribute what you can when you're able, rather than trying to move the globe every free moment you have. Connect with your friends. See what they're doing. Attend a meeting with someone you trust and see how you feel.
I don't mean this in any kind of way. It's just funny to see you spell ostracized like Australia instead of like with OST. You're right, though. Being kind to the weak and ostracized is punk as fuck. It's true. Don't hate yourself, hate billionaires. Yeah, there are a lot of things that you should hate. Yourself is not one of them. Playing Tokon and giving homeless people food is my start, at least. Hard but rewarding. Yeah. Doing something. Like, do something to materially improve the conditions of the people in your area, or to work towards being able to do that at some point. But again, it is do what you can. Literally from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, not from each every fucking thing he has at every waking moment. That is not what the quote is. Bro, I'm German. I don't know this language. Sucks. I speak 3. No, fair enough. I'm not. It's just I don't actually like look at it and go like, oh, what a fool or anything like that. Like it is no value judgment on you at all. It was just funny to me to see ostracized spelled like Australia because it's pronounced the same fucking way. You're not wrong. It is literally pronounced like the first part of ostracized is pronounced like the first part of Australia. Ostracized Australia. Like it's exactly the same, right? It was a very valid mistake. It's just funny to me to read it.
You will get things wrong. You will waste your time, but you will also find your way. Find a community.
This is great. This is a great ending.
Maybe even change something significant.
Australized.
It may not lead to the revolution, but even an act as simultaneously normal and scary as building or improving a union in your workplace can be revolutionary, provided it's done with the aim of achieving substantively different conditions.
Right.
It's poignant that, as I was writing this segment, the TCG Player Union, which had been fighting intimidation to be recognised by TCG Player, were all essentially fired en masse when the company purchased by eBay a couple of years ago shut down the authentication center.
My next step is joining a humanitarian organization. I hope it works out. Yeah. And like oftentimes, like if you, like there are probably like dedicated, depending on where you live, I mean, there are probably dedicated leftist organizations that are operating and helping people and engaging in mutual aid in your area, right? If you live in like a very small town, maybe not, but if you live in like in any kind of like major city, it's probably there.
Which was
a bus ride away at worst.
They called for an emergency boycott in response, and thanks to that,
but yeah, baby, like that's good. Do one thing. I really do view it like the gym, right? Do a weight until it feels like it's moving easily, and then add more weight. Because the goal here is to get stronger, not to break your bones. The goal here is long-term advocacy and change, and eventually revolution. I say eventually because it's a long-term thing, right? You got to be able to keep that shit up for years, and if you have to do it in a sustainable way.
Approved severance package for the workers of the closed center so that they can land on their feet. eBay and TCG Player had to shut up shop to stop them organising, and even then the union managed to get one last win out of the ghouls. This potentially inspiring a resurgence of their movement in the company's remaining locations. Something I wholeheartedly...
This is not a small town. Finding stuff ain't hard. Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying you. I'm saying if the royal you, if you live in a very small town, then it probably is hard. But yeah, like if you live in fucking Addis Ababa, then no, it's probably fine, right?
Heartedly hope occurs and would entirely support. In organising your workplace, you also have to contend with many of the same issues we've been discussing that plagued the history of revolutionary and political movements. The kind of short-term wins found in class collaboration over class struggle only serves to hamper liberation in the long term. We can see the comparison in no shortcuts. Jane F. McAverly summarizes the case studies of 2 dock workers' unions on each of the US's coasts who favored quick material wins and deep substantive changes, respectively. On the East Coast, where workers and their leaders fought chiefly for money and other material gains, official corruption became legendary.
Jimmy
Bribes
Hoffa.
served to buy off the Eastern unions for decades. On the West Coast, where the unions fought for control over production, that is, for the right to negotiate rules governing safety, hours, and similar issues, bribes didn't work. Money wasn't what these workers were looking for. The West Coast workers routinely engaged in strikes. They had to. Their demands were substantial, and their employers weren't easy to beat. The endless class struggle in which the West Coast workers engaged resulted in high-quality contracts that cemented a high level of participation, active membership, and a strong relationship between the rank and file and the union leaders.
That is a really, really good example. Wow. That's one of those, like, brain-expanding examples. No shortcuts. Another great book. Just got added to the list. That is a really great example of organizing in like how to organize in a more productive way, right? Doing the right thing the right way for the right reasons.
This is a trend in social development also
Magic.
implied by the narrative of Aetherdrift.
Holy shit, it's a video about Magic the Gathering. Inspirational
Working
stuff,
for
man.
gains
Oh, yeah.
within a system engenders complacency and limited victories. Working to replace the old with the new, whilst experimental, can also lead to much grander and longer lasting change.
In once again, black people being fucking decades ahead of everyone else, you cannot dismantle the master's house with his own tools.
Another great lesson to take from McEverly's book is that of the mobilization shortcut being a self-defeating option versus longer, dedicated organization. The working class and advocates for liberation have fallen into a vicious cycle. More people have pinned their hopes on getting socialists or socialist-light politicians into positions of power to regain lost ground. When these initiatives fail, even more ground
When is it going to talk about SpongeBob's role in all this? When is it going to talk about Magic the Gathering?
is lost, and so people put more of a focus on mobilizing only during big elections to reserve their energy and recover
Yeah.
quickly. It's like occasionally jamming your foot on the accelerator of a car that's stuck in the mud and getting nowhere. Rather, what needs to happen is the difficult, small-scale, perceived as boring work of organizing over mobilizing.
Everybody want to be a revolutionary, but don't nobody want to do the damn dishes. Again, a quote that I can't remember where I heard some black folks quoting it though. I assume someone had actually like written it that they were quoting. But yeah, it's the boring shit. You know what I mean? It's the free breakfast programs to let the Panthers point guns at power. It is the boring shit.
One-on-one conversations.
Even in like the least radical way possible, it is the door knocking that got Zoran into office, right? Not the Instagram reels where he smiles like this. Hello, New York. Not the memes.
Your workplace
The
or
door
in your
knocking.
community about what's happening, what people are struggling with, and what needs to happen to resolve it. One conversation won't do anything, much as shoving a single stick into that tire divot won't free the car from the swamp.
Marty Coleman said everybody want to be a bodybuilder, nobody want to lift these heavy-ass weights. Maybe one is a parody on the other. True.
Each one you add, however, pushes quantitative change into a qualitative one. Of course, it doesn't hurt to win those elections. Mamdani's platform has the chance to massively improve things for the people of New York, and hopefully will create an ideological and material jumping off point for radical politics in the States. But putting effort into getting those wins must be tempered with effort to solidify that and other victories by choosing strife and working in your neighborhood both in and out of election season.
Again, this is not
the only way
end.
we're getting through this is together. Both in the sense that we have to have radical solidarity with people we've never met, but also that it has to be us demanding and eventually enacting change, not some suit we trust to save the world or get dental on our behalf. Problems can
Ditto
go away
dingoes.
thanks to benevolence from your rulers, but problems will stay away if you've organized to liquidate them yourself.
Right.
Literally until probably Edge of Eternity.
Magic the Gathering.
I said earlier, myself and the other world builders on the team were working at basically crunch or near crunch levels, right? Juggling the finishing one set, being in sort of
3
main
references from the
stride
last
development
hour. I'm
of a second
feasting.
set and
Those
beginning
well.
a third, like doing all of those two or all three of those things at any one at any given point in time was like not unheard of, very common, and just that rushed pace. Also, like that's the material component to the sort of the soft, like, hey, settle down. It's the like, well, I wish I could spend time on this, and I wish I could do research to sort of to push that into my writing, to deepen the depiction of the people and cultures, history and present moment of this world. But like, fuck, I gotta hit this deadline. Like, we have cards that are printing and I can't spend the time on it.
I mean, certainly sounds like WotC needs a union. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, well,
That is true.
yeah, I think that would be great if that happens.
History does not
Guy who
end.
knows WotC is never
There
getting a
is
union.
still time
Well,
to
maybe.
change things.
Maybe.
You have
No,
that
don't be
ability
hopeless.
and power, and infinitely more so organized in union with other people.
Basically, the video is 30% MTG and 7% Amazing Politics. I don't think it's 30% MTG. It's like the first 30 minutes are pretty MTG, right? Yeah. The first 42 minutes are 100% Magic. This video is like 15% Magic.
Legal norms have
Maybe.
already been destroyed. People have been deported. The state is relinquishing responsibility for gender-affirming care or punishing practitioners who administer it. But the pendulum of these horrors can be swung the other way. New legal norms can be built, ones far more emancipatory than those that have been broken. The rising active hostility towards the Gestapo-adjacent ICE
Yup.
means that advocacy not just against present and future wrongful deportations, but the entire oppressive structure represented by the border can gain great momentum.
Yep.
When the state falters, the people can take their place, much as the Panthers did with their medical programs,
Sickle cell
whilst
anemia
raising
testing.
consciousness and building the potential for new relations. Just as the re-establishment of European monarchy at the Congress of Vienna falsely spelled the end for bourgeois republicanism, the past collapses of post-capitalist revolutions cannot kill the drive and necessity for liberation. Part of this video has been about the tension that exists in modern revolutionary media, or media about revolution. It exists both as inspiration to act, but also as co-opted images which feed rather than challenge capitalist realism, and which can produce interpassivity, the simulation of activism in consumption. But you cannot discount the inspirational potential of it too. The Andor subreddit, for example, is a digital safari of normies engaging in complicated political philosophy for the first time because the showrunners pushed to feature the ABCs of it in their script.
Right.
Additionally, Marxist writers like Bertolt Brecht ensured that audiences left his work having been made to contend with the ideas he was trying to convey by breaking their immersion. By forcefully alienating an audience from the story they were seeing, reminding them of the fiction by breaking the fourth wall in any number of ways, he encouraged them to think about the themes in real time and form their own opinions as people. I'm reminded of how the video game Disco Elysium at one point directly chides the player for choosing a centrist path.
These options seem awfully fascist or communist. What if I don't want to say them?
Say one of these fascist or communist things, or fuck off.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel like people have been talking to me this entire time.
Say
That is interesting. Listen, I'm not gonna judge off of that, but this, you know, someone's on this creator while searching for the specific clip. I do not know his politics, but his reaction to the moment is so perfect, attempting to slip by the point of this game in order to get back to playing the game. Yeah, Brechtwood has lost his mind over this. It's not some crypto advocacy to go and harass this man. You'd be a bad person if you did that. Yeah.
This kind of how I feel.
Sounds like you gotta fuck off, bud. I don't make the rules. Yeah. Sounds like there is no fence for you to sit on here. I don't know. To be fair, Disco Elysium also makes fun of you for basically any political stance, you know?
Like people have been talking to me this entire time.
Say one of these fascist or communist things, or fuck off, the game scolds after being asked for a third way between these two binary options. There's no getting away from making a clear, ideological choice.
Disco Elysium is a fantastic game, by the way. Friend of mine bought it for my birthday a couple years ago. I haven't played it. I think I maybe will soon.
Here, and the player must recognize that either their
Maybe even on
predilections
stream.
are
Maybe this is going to be our
fascistic or
return to gaming.
communistic,
Is playing
or
Disco
be
Elysium.
endlessly mocked by the text for considering themselves
The world's most laughable centrist. What in the world?
above all that. That at some point,
Is that an
it will
achievement?
no longer become a choice to reject allying with one or the other side. Stories have the potential to incite new ideas and internal change. Otherwise, fiction wouldn't be targeted by the censor. On that note, there's one quote from Disco that I'll never stop thinking about, which does spur me to action and which gives me great comfort in decaying conditions. In dark times, should the stars also go out? This could have just been a video about nitpicking media like Aether Revolt's lack of vision in comparison to Aether Drift's and contrasting examples with actual revolutions. But the more I delved into this topic and the sharper the contradictions within our present state of affairs got, I found it impossible not to expand into actual theory and the dire reality of fascism. I'm just a Magic the Gathering YouTuber, which I say not to distance myself from my own convictions, but more so to exhort that you step further than just agreeing or disagreeing in this digital space. Go engage with the detailed texts that have informed my perspective and build the world.
These books
you
are
want to
great.
see
I am
yourself.
very interested in a lot of these
It
books.
could be in a political organization. It could be in a community garden. It could even begin in an LGS.
What's the LG?
Stay
Oh, is
lit by
that
the
some
stars.
magic shit?
Choose strife and stay spicy.
Local game store?
This is a video about Aether Drift. Duh.
Spike Show Harrier is clearly
Yeah, no, it is. That's true. This supposedly, so I have been told, it's a video about Aether Drift. I'm not entirely sure that I believe you, but I suppose the video started with Aether Drift, and I guess it's ending with Aether Drift, so it's probably about Aether Drift. I think I won't think on any of the other stuff in the middle, because clearly this is just a video about Magic the Gathering, and everybody knows that media is never political. Yeah.
a reference to Mario Kart's Blue Shell, and whilst it aesthetically works, its mechanics are rife with ludonarrative dissonance. Oh, well, that was a bit of a video, wasn't it? I want to say a massive thank you to Miguel Lopez, who was my interview subject for today.
I didn't
This
even
video-
get through 6 seconds of Magic the
It
Gathering.
would not have existed without his insights and
Couldn't even get
many
through
of the
6,
things
7
that he raised
of
in our
Magic the
conversation were just a brilliant human being. What a treasured character in both mind and soul. Is there anything that you would like to say that you'd like to ensure is in part of this this project that I'm working on that you haven't already mentioned, or anything that you'd really like to make sure that people take with them when they leave this video?
Free Palestine.
Hell yeah.
There's just a list in there at the end that just scrolls by.
I also want to thank Jamie, aka Peachy Kings, on Instagram for producing
Was it the
this
Akira slide? I
absolutely
just realized.
phenomenal piece of art that I used in the thumbnail. I adore it. Please go
Damn.
check out their work. Go give them a follow. Go give them a support.
Boom, by the
Go
way.
give them a commission. Go give them money. Go give them money.
Give 'em the money.
And of course, the most important people to thank are my patrons. I purposefully did not seek a sponsor for this video because
Listen, I'm not the one to talk about this, because Lord knows that sometimes my conclusions are also very. How are there 7 minutes left in this video? Oh, okay, it's credits. Okay, I was gonna say what? How could they have
I wanted
7
it
minutes
to
left
be
talk
as
about?
unfiltered and unauto-censored
Akira,
as
great
I
piece of
possibly
apolitical
could
media.
get it. I think that this is a very important topic to speak truly on and speak accurately on, as opposed to
Even people's textbook example of just like literally big muscly men shooting big lasers at each other, right? Dragon Ball. The sort of defining villain of that franchise is a parody of evil landlords. So
speak through the lens.
nothing is political.
Or
Don't
speak
think
through
about it
the filter, rather.
Oh yeah, you definitely don't have room to talk about that. Yeah, no, I'm not necessarily. Listen,
Thank
I'm
you
just
very
saying,
much
how
to
is
everyone whose name
how could there
I'm
possibly
about
be
to
7
read,
minutes
and
left?
everyone else
There
who
isn't.
supports me on Patreon for effectively keeping me going for this year whilst I make this mega project. So I really can't appreciate all of you enough. Thank you so much.
4 things
and
for you.
a special thank you to my $10 patrons, whose names include hashtag.
All right, awesome movie, great movie. This is longer than any movie I've ever seen. This might be longer than any of the Lord of the Rings extended edition movies too. Great video. I don't. A communist writes dimple. That is great. A filthy communist buddy. A gay American couple. Okay, they have amazing names, I will say. 17 blooming orchids in the hanging gardens of Empyrean. They have really great names. A waste of a perfectly good skeleton. A treasure token featuring Spice 8 Rack's fate. Okay, they have really good names. An entire council of ghosts. An exhausted capybara. They have really good names. But I'm not going to sit here and listen to it read all of them out, just because there's going to be so many more than this too, I'm sure. Great video though. Great video. There's also a fundraiser here for PCRF, provide vital support for Palestinian youth. I don't know, what does PCRF stand for? Palestinian something relief fund, I assume. But yeah. Wonderful video. I was gonna watch a video about Chile and Ashende as well, but it turns out that in this hour of Spice 8 Rack video, we had Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. Thank you. That makes sense. Palestinian youth. In this hour of Spice 8 Rack video, apparently I had 3 hours of things to talk about, including like a 15-minute little detour on Love and Deep Space. So, you know, it kind of is what it is. Enraged superpowered space immigrant fights enraged superpowered space dictator and wins. That is true. Like the video, Brick? Oh, sure. I mean, that's a like. And I mean, if that doesn't earn a subscribe, I don't know what does, right? But yeah, I mean, great video. I'm glad we actually got around to finishing it as well, even though it did take 2 days, as it turned out. You're welcome, Brick. Thank you. And also, you're welcome for being able to gaze upon my countenance. For now, that is going to do it. Hopefully, I will see you tomorrow. I will say, I think I have. It's free, don't cost you nothing. Damn right. I think I do have something like something close to 8 straight hours of meetings tomorrow. So there is a non-zero chance that my soul is so drained by work by the end of tomorrow that I just take a nap and I'll see you on Saturday. That should be illegal. Yeah. I think my first meeting is it's not 8 straight hours, but I think it's like 7. I think my first meeting is at like 10 a.m. and I have almost wall-to-wall meetings until 5 p.m. from there. So there is a I think a pretty solid chance. I'm not going to be busy afterwards. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I'm going to be busy afterwards, though I do have shit to do, come to think of it, that I am not going to ever get to do that on Thursday. But mostly I think I'm just going to be tired. So I might see you on Saturday, where we will start talking about Socialism and Man by Castro and Guevara, and also start taking a look at the internals of Cuba instead of just the externals of them getting fucked over by the U.S. Read on the TPLF sometime, please. TPLF. What does that stand for again? I'm sorry, I forget the acronym. If you have something that you want me to read, Apollo, there should be a link to my Discord in any video that you go to by me in the description. Join the Discord, put that shit in required reading. It'll be better that way. It'll be durable. I can go back and scroll through it whenever. That's how we ended up watching this, right? Does someone put this in required reading? Any video that I've ever uploaded, if you go to the description, there'll be a link to the Discord. Join that shit. Put whatever you want me to talk about or read or look into in required reading. It'll stay forever there instead of relying on my memory. See you when I see a streamer, TY for stream. Indeed. For now, have a wonderful rest of your day. I will maybe have a video up on at least part of what we did for Cuba up for Saturday. I think I will. I think I should. But yes, have a wonderful rest of your day. Put your own oxygen mask on first, all of that. Don't overwork yourself. But if you do feel like you have some extra energy and some spare time and some spare emotional labor, maybe look into a local, leftist organization in your region, or if none exists, or if that sounds like too much, again, maybe just make a new friend. Gotta fix my Discord account. That shit got hacked. Oh, so true. Make a new friend, expand your network, make a friend with someone in your local community. And if you don't have the energy to do all of that, then just make sure, stay relaxed, get your mental back, keep up hope, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.